Start with the summary. We did start back in December, probably back in July, putting this plan together. Planning Commission reviewed it in December, and then the town board in December, as part of the comp plan, felt that you needed additional public input on it, so you decided to table the plan and go through an expanded public process to gather more public input. So we had several meetings, one a business community meeting on January 30th, a meeting for Original Superior on the 31st. Deborah hosted a meeting and had some attendance there. We had some boards at that meeting. And at a meeting for the Rock Creek residents in early February. We posted it on SurveyMonkey and got a number of responses on that. On March 7th, we discussed the public comment at the TSC. So we're talking about some of their recommendations today as well. So the community meetings, the first meeting in Original Superior focused on Original Superior traffic issues on the DDI, Marshall McCaslin, and so forth. Rock Creek meeting really focused on Rock Creek traffic issues, roundabouts, and the McCaslin division. Back in December, when the Planning Commission reviewed it, they generally felt that roundabouts were okay on McCaslin and Indiana Rock Creek Parkway. They were concerned about the medians. They were generally in favor of the medians on McCaslin, and they were generally not in favor of the proposed roundabouts on Rock Creek Parkway. They wanted to see examination of data on existing roundabouts as well as intersections through town. We'll present some of that today. And they wanted a level of service at various intersections, and we'll have some of that data. As far as the summary of public comment from SurveyMonkey, we had about 54 respondents to that questionnaire that was posted. 31 respondents came prior to when we were able to track the nearest intersection. And then at the community meetings, we had 48 attendees at all community meetings, and we summarized a lot of their public comment. We sent out a summary of the public comment to you in your packet. You should have that. This was, it's hard to see this, but was sticky note ideas. So at all public meetings, we asked them to, if you have any specific issues, write it on a sticky note. And this is kind of a summary of that. And we did this is hard to read, so we gave you a copy of that. And we're going to touch on a lot of the comments that came out of that. These are how I'm going to kind of step through the public comments, talk about Original Superior, roundabouts, McCaslin Vision, McCaslin Ridge improvements, bicycle trail issues, transit services, and neighborhood electric vehicles. So starting in Original Superior, we had a board that showed the Marshall McCaslin proposed improvements with the triple left and the right turn bypass. Some of the comments we received on that. That intersection is not pedestrian friendly now, and didn't seem like it would be with the improvements. It should not become just a mass of concrete. We need to respect the egress and access for Original Superior residents, and we should try to maintain a gateway appearance. And TSC had comments to this effect in their comments, and I'll summarize those a little later. Also on 76th Street, there were a lot of concerns about trucks idling, and especially, we made the improvements up by Guardian Storage, and so we heard that trucks are now idling there instead of over, across from Costco fueling station. And we've since posted no overnight parking along Guardian to try to resolve at least the issue of trucks idling all night long near the Sagamore residents. They still have concerns. There are conflicts between trucks coming in and out and using 76th Street, using Sycamore, and it's really hard to resolve that because marketplaces are a key economic generator, and try to restrict trucks, it's hard.
Well, the deliveries to the back of those stores.
There is an issue with the truck access to Costco and Target, I think, back there, and there may be some issues trying to turn out of that, and that's why they go south on 76th Street instead of north, and I'll be looking into that to try to see what I can do to if there is an issue, if we can resolve that. But we heard from the residents about the trucks, and it's hard to resolve those conflicts. 76th Street corridor, I'll have a couple graphics on there, and there are also concerns about Cold Creek traffic, especially the Cold Creek crossing and restricting some of the traffic on Cold Creek. On 76th Street, and I'll be adding some of this to the plan about this corridor, what we can do in the future. Here's Guardian, and that's since been widened. What we can do to kind of narrow and make it more pedestrian friendly. Here's some of our ideas. 76th Street, where we widened in front of Guardian, we actually decided to put a 36-foot wide section. Down south, we have a 54 or 60-foot section in this area. But north, we'll have a 36-foot section to provide for a lane in each direction plus bike lanes. We have extra pavement in this area adjacent to Sagamore, and what we may do is to stripe or eventually construct a median on 76th, reduce it to one lane in each direction, and stripe it for bike lanes along here. Toyed with the idea of putting parking, which you really don't need any parking in this area, but to make it a little more narrow, to put a median in there and to actually stripe bike lanes.
So, Alex, we don't have bike lanes striped there now? Are those bike lanes, they're standard width? Can we make them a little bit wider?
And here we
than
can.
typical bike lane?
And here, because we have plenty of pavement width
Okay.
in this particular area. So we can't look at making, and they're normally 6 feet from the edge of the curb out to the lane, which makes an effective 4.5-foot bike lane.
Yeah.
So we can go a little wider in this stretch because we have plenty of pavement width.
And I think there's a lot of bike or cyclists that use that area, so it'd be nice if we could make those slightly wider. Okay.
Sure. And then this area here, what we could do is stripe this for a parking lane and still have a lane, so we could have parking lane, a bike lane, travel lane, still a striped or raised median, travel lane and bike lane. So that would provide some parking adjacent to the ball fields. So I think we'll incorporate this into the plan.
Can I stop you one quick second?
Sure.
You back up. No, I mean, there you go. I always want to call it Town 9, and it's Founders Park. The parking, are we going to incorporate any more parking other than 76th
Yes, I'll have
Street?
traffic, just a minute.
Coming up.
Okay.
You're going to get into TSC's recommendation, but we all three supported that
And
parking
not
at the
additional
ball
parking.
field.
The other thing I'm thinking about doing is making this a four-way stop, so we can provide easier access for the Sagamore residents to get to Town 9 Park.
Safer for the kids getting to the park.
Right, and then we'll have a buffer here, so you can have a pedestrian refuge in the middle, take away the turn lane, and make it a pedestrian refuge and a four-way stop to make it more
And it'll all be
pedestrian.
striped.
Well, this could be striped initially, and if we ever need, at some point we're going to need to overlay or do something on 76th Street. At that time, maybe we consider raised.
I meant striped for pedestrian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be crosswalks.
Yeah.
Alex, where the parking by the ball field, that's right on the edge there. Matt, what's the oldest age of kids that'll be using that field? Or Jim?
Little league age.
So is there any concern about foul balls going back to the park, the cars along the side there? And
At that age, it seems like...
But they don't go very high.
Stop, I think is big
Yeah.
enough.
yeah, it's straight back, but what about the ones that kind of go towards right field but go foul?
We can just put a sign up there. If a baseball parent doesn't know they park at their own risk, we can put one sign up that says park at your own risk.
I think the answer to your question is yes, there's a risk.
Right.
And Alex, were we thinking about parking on 76 adjacent to the fields and also on the west side of 76
No.
too, on both sides?
No.
No. That's
Just
what
the
I
one
thought.
side.
Just the one side, right, exactly, the one closest, so, right. Okay.
Okay, you asked about parking around Town 9. This is actually the Coal Creek, this is Coal Creek Crossing, so, the two new roads that come in, and they're responsible for continuing the bulb outs and other curb and gutter and sidewalk that's in the original town, continuing that on their side. And so now we're talking with them about maybe possibly combining the north side and putting curb and gutter and parking on the north side and having bulb outs. So basically complete the street and get that all done. And so we have more parking for Town 9. Right now, it's kind of a difficult situation. They're parking along there, not in an area that is, I mean, it's wide enough, but they're using that parking and then you got to go around it.
We were out there on Easter Sunday and came up Coal Creek, and I was confused where to park, so
Where to
we
park.
just pulled all the way behind Sally's Beauty Supply or whatever that is. So how many
So-
cars would
so
fit?
here's-
It's right here.
So
Okay.
here's
Okay.
a graphic with parking once we complete this.
What's that? Oh,
You lost my note.
I put them.
I think there's 145
It's
spaces around the whole park.
And then it is, on Coal Creek Drive, is that diagonal or is it parallel?
Well,
Alice, look
It's
above
parallel.
It's parallel, okay,
All along Coal Creek Drive.
okay.
Look above your graph.
Your notes up top.
Oh, you put it up there?
Yeah, made it bigger.
And so there'll be adjacent to the park, there'll be 79 adjacent where you won't have to cross the street, and then 67 on the other side of the streets.
Because we do have that entire parking lot over there that is, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You could also use that as well, you're saying.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so if you ever wanted to have a big community event,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's plenty of parking.
We used to have Superior Days there, and you needed the parking for that.
But for the Founders Park itself, I think there's plenty of parking.
I do too. Maybe
Yeah, so
it's
we
too much.
debated about whether to put diagonal parking here. We felt there was plenty of parking, that it would be fine with parallel
Yeah,
parking.
I agree.
And it continues when we did Coal Creek Drive improvements, we always said that we would continue any new improvements to the west would just mimic what's already there, so
Right.
that's our thought.
Okay.
Okay, we also discussed the flood mitigation options and the access options in southern Superior. With the Second Avenue Bridge, you had those 4 options, and we presented these at the community meeting. This was kind of the feedback we got. 6 people liked option 1, where we replaced the existing bridge. 4 people liked constructing new bridge at Third and widening the Second Avenue Bridge. So that was the feedback.
One's more expensive than the other one.
Right. So the TSC made a recommendation on that. Roundabouts, Planning Commission were generally in favor of roundabouts on McCaslin, really not on Rock Creek Parkway. We had a number of comments from the public on this. Roundabouts only work where there is even flow of traffic in all directions. It's not the case on McCaslin. Unless truly needed and the only real solution, then you can construct more. Roundabouts only Rock Creek, but not too many on a single road. Please don't overdo it. Those are some of the comments, but this is interesting in terms of the comments we received. About a third felt no more roundabouts should be built. About a third said you can do them at select intersections, and another third were fully supportive. So about 2/3 seem to be in favor of roundabouts, 1/3 haven't had roundabouts.
I would probably be in the middle.
There's a little data manipulation going there. Alex, well, how I see that is no to a few is about 2/3, so I could interpret it the other way, too.
You know what Mark Twain said about statistics? There are 3 types of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. So you can use
So you can take this for what it's
what it's worth is that most people are in favor of roundabouts. That's how it is.
The plurality.
This statistical sample is not too representative of anything anyway.
Come on, Lisa, weigh in here.
So, and then another issue is the McCaslin corridor vision, and the plan contained a vision, a proposed vision, and we want to comment on it. The Planning Commission was generally in favor of the medians, but they were not as high as a priority as roundabouts. And they also want us to look at other traffic control measures. The comments were received. We asked, do you think it's aligned with what is appropriate for McCaslin, encouraging, discouraging through traffic by lower speeds, traffic calming, increased pedestrian friendliness. And that was 44 said, yes, agree with that statement. 18 said, division is not needed, the road is fine. 14 said, it's too local serving, we should think regionally. And there were 21 other comments. So these comments kind of balance that out, but there were a number of, a lot of people weighed in on that issue. We also had comments about needed noise abatement, don't change unless you're receiving requests to do so, it's a waste of money, lower speeds within reason, add rumble strips, you need some calming, function regionally but needs increased pedestrian infrastructure. A lot of these comments, so we get paid big bucks to figure out which way we're going to go with this. Anyway, I developed kind of four concepts here to look at what we heard. One is just leave the road as is, add a couple of traffic signals. Here's one at High Plains, one at Indiana, and minimal changes, call it good. That's one concept. Another concept is to add the medians, but not the roundabouts, so we have a single at Indiana and High Plains, maybe add the medians, and here's kind of a concept of a wide median, how it would work.
Alex, at Indiana and High Plains, pedestrian activated, pedestrian and car activated, or just regular on all the time?
Both at High Plains and High Plains McCaslin would be both vehicle and pedestrian. And I have a question about this. We'll give you some input on that. And this will be a vehicle and pedestrian access thing.
Alex, what about that Christensen and McCaslin?
Got a concept for that? No, I mean, people asked about that, and from, looking at that, and I'll have a level service graphic in a minute to show you, we don't have real bad levels of service there. It's not, it's difficult to get out, to make that left-hand turn.
Yeah.
And you have other options in that neighborhood. So in terms of whether we need a traffic light or a roundabout, to me, it didn't seem like we needed
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to see either one of those, but I don't know what else to do there. I never had an issue with it, but it's always because I go right, and there's that lane that you can merge from.
Right.
But last several weeks, I've been going left, and man, in the mornings, it's super tough.
Yeah, it's hard to get out, but there aren't that many, there's not that many vehicles doing that. And, for the ones up here, that's the only way out, but for the people that are down here, you may have another way out to go out to Indiana and then around. So I'm not recommending anything there. Another concept would be, this is the corridor vision in the plan update that we had originally developed with roundabout at Rock Creek Parkway, traffic signal at High Plains, medians, and then a roundabout in Indiana, and a roundabout at 128. So that was the original vision, and everybody commented on that. Now, based on the TSC feedback that we got, that they seem to want to look at maybe separation between the trail and the vehicles to make it a more pedestrian-friendly environment. We got comments, especially from the Christensen neighborhood, about noise. I started developing a concept where we could build a berm in the Christensen area, provide the trail between the berm and the neighborhood, maybe move the roadway over. So now we introduce a curve here and a curve there. So now we're introducing some traffic calming features by doing it horizontally and swinging it out. So we created a berm here and a berm here and tried to provide some noise mitigation in that neighborhood. So here's kind of the cross-section. If you look like through an area here, here's and this shouldn't have the median there, but if you envision the two-lane roadway here, a berm going up, and then the trail here, and here's your second floor, you kind of cut off the noise line of sight between the second floors. Now, it only works in certain situations. I think a bunch of these homes we could probably mitigate, but we're going to have trade-offs because I think down here, you start to have views. You may affect some of the views. Right in this neighborhood here, you really can't see the range because there's a slope that's right here. So you really can't see the back range. But in this area here, this berm may affect it. But if you look at this diagram here, you're looking over the berm. Just a comment, I was trying to follow up on some discussion we had at the TSC to see if we can do something in this area here to provide both noise mitigation and buffering of the trail.
Is that the, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, but raise my hand.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. I try not to interrupt you guys when you're giving presentations. I know you have a thing,
that's right.
and we ask you to prepare them, and then we interrupt you, and you can react. But on this one, you are sort of finished with your McCaslin concept, so I did want to ask one question. Maybe I missed it, but what I didn't see in here is the really big concern that I have and I know others have with the getting off 36 issue and McCaslin, and then getting on to Marshall.
Right.
I saw he had it was 128, or whatever, yeah, Marshall. And trying to make it so that that's not a mergeable situation. Because I really think I know others believe also it's an accident waiting to happen. I haven't seen that in any of your concepts. Can you talk about that?
Well, the way we had addressed that in the DDI design is that the eastbound ramp coming off US 36 is now going to be signalized. So that you'll have a stop condition there.
But people will still be able to merge.
No, because they'll have to stop, and then you'll alternate flow
Thanks.
between, you'll stop the ramp, and then the southbound traffic will be going, and then they'll stop, and then the ramp traffic will go. So we're
So we'll
separating.
never have people from Louisville merging into people, coming off.
So that all the ramp, all the
That address
exiting
that whole
traffic
thing.
going south, either going to Marshall or going left at McCaslin to go to the ice rink, all that traffic will stop at a traffic signal and wait for the southbound traffic to go. And then, so we're separating in time, so we're not going to have a merge
Okay.
situation anymore.
Thanks. And the other question I had about McCaslin one was, as I'm coming out of these meetings, and as I was, trying to give people directions and things, I remembered that people coming out of here, out of original town, have no chance to turn left, and if you shoot over to Marshall, merging on a Marshall, trying to make a left turn is a real bear. Is there any remedy for that? Any better way for folks to be able to turn left out of?
Especially if you go down First Avenue.
Like first or second or third. Well, that was the primary reason why we were looking at the triple left, to try and reduce the queues on the eastbound left turn movement. That eastbound left turn movement backs up, and so the traffic blocks first, sometimes it blocks second. By reducing those queues, you may be able to turn out of First and Second Avenues a little easier.
Okay, that's right.
But it's still, that's a lot of traffic on there, and it's a difficult situation. Yeah.
I guess I'm a little surprised, if I'm reading this right, that the roundabout is still envisioned at McCaslin and Rock Creek Parkway, and I
It's not
thought,
envisioned, that's one concept.
okay,
I
that's
gave you
just the
4
concept.
Yeah, I gave you 4 concepts, and
Okay.
so you can choose. I'm not, there's 3 or 4, and you can give me some permutations on what you may want to.
Just personally, I think Rock Creek Parkway right now is working well, and
It's working well.
I don't know why we'd spend any money on it.
But of any of the intersections along McCaslin, that one is the best roundabout candidate, because we have so many left turns at that intersection, and roundabouts work well when there's a lot of left turns. So, it would improve some traffic flow there. But again, we had a lot of comments not to put one in there. Everything's fine. So.
It's never much of a bad.
So I just wanted to ask, on this particular slide where you were discussing the berming, are you going to do berming throughout McCaslin or just in that particular
Well,
area?
this one, it makes sense here because I'm trying to also do the noise mitigation. And so I think we have some areas where it works, maybe it doesn't work. This has to be studied. You got to look at line of sight, the heights of the houses and all that. But just the initial looking at it, there's some benefits of doing it here. As we get up, going around the ridge, you're way up high, and there's limited
Right.
room up there.
That
so,
makes sense.
So you're probably not going to do it down there. You may do it further south. I had a picture You may do it, there's some areas in here where you may do it around Indiana, but I think as you get further here, the road goes
way, yeah.
up, so it may not make some sense. So some limited berming here,
I would agree with that.
so there are, I think.
There were a lot of folks that complained about that particular area. I mean, where I am, where my cul-de-sac is, there's a natural berm already, and the neighbors that are on either side, they don't have the berm, and they say it's just ridiculous. You can't even hear yourself think outdoors. Whereas that's not, where the berm is, where we are, we don't have that issue.
Right.
So I'm just looking at the rest of that area and seeing if there were, and I know there were people that on Torrey's Peak and some of those cul-de-sacs at the ends, Zircon, or I can't remember the names of all of them, but they had concerns, and I'm just wondering if you had picked that up in the comments, and I'm assuming you did.
Right, I did. But, so I think there's opportunity down here, but not the whole way. And so I think what our recommendation is going to be, let's do a noise study or investigate a little further whether this concept of berm would make sense and what areas it would work and what areas it would.
Great idea.
Am I correct in drawing the conclusion that berming, if noise mitigation can be accomplished by several ways, slowing traffic down, and which was part of the widening the median concept and narrowing the roadway and all that kind of stuff, or berming, or another option. It seems to me berming is less expensive than putting in a median and then having to plant that median or otherwise make it pleasant. So is berming cheaper?
In some cases it is, I think in this concept, I'm also planning to get the height of the berm, I'm realigning the roadway. I think it would be cheaper if we didn't have to touch the roadway and I had enough room to get the berm in. Yes, it'd definitely be cheaper. In this case, it's about the same just because I'm trying to introduce the traffic calming features as well to get the speeds a little slower. So I'm introducing the curves and also to make room for enough width to get the berm. I could also, we could also start with a wall, a little wall and then berm if we don't have the width. So in some cases it would be cheaper than medians. In other cases about the same. And McCaslin Ridge improvements, we had a question about whether you favor a traffic signal for both vehicles and peds. 11 chose that. Whether just have a signalized ped crossing. 12 chose that one. And no improvements are necessary. 10 chose that one. And probably because they're on McCaslin, they don't want to stop. So. We also had public transit comments. Colin Ride was a big issue, reinstituting that. There's some changes to 228. Consider a town shuttle, and that's something that we can look at. Provide carpool areas, and I brought this up in another meeting I was having with Dr. Cog and other people. What do you tell people now we're implementing the managed lanes and people want to carpool? Well, where do they carpool? Where are you telling people to carpool? And Dr. Cog was saying, well, carpool at the park and ride areas. Anyway, but we've had comments, and I don't know if it's at the town center, but should we have a carpool lot? And then discount student passes, safer ped crossings. Bike and ped needs, a bunch of issues identified. One of the things we talked about was, and this came out of the first and final mile study, with the ped bridge at crossing US 36 right now. It's difficult to go across that bridge with a bike, and we can make some improvements on our side because we have the maintenance access. The suggestion to take the maintenance access and make that, widen it out and make it a bike ramp. You have more difficulties on the other side. So we'll look at all those. Neighborhood vehicles. Lukewarm support. They're concerned about the expensive implementation, concerned about safety. She just left. Lisa did a lot of work on that, defining routes and where the improvements are necessary, so those are the comments we had on it. Talked about, the planning commission wanted this in terms of what are the level of service issues we have now, and what we did was we looked at the major intersections in town and looked at areas that had level of service issues. You know, we rate level of service on a scale of A to F, F being breakdown, D is normally acceptable in urban areas, and we don't really have any E's or F's other than at the interchange and Marshall-McCaslin area. So the grade D level of service Ds, these are the intersections that have level of service D now. There aren't too many of them. And the red is the AM peak hour movements. So right now, getting out of Indiana onto McCaslin, getting out of the Ridge, getting out of Shamrock onto 88 are the issues. Surprisingly, Christensen didn't make that. And then in the evening, this is Coleridge, turning left onto Rock Creek Parkway. We have a problem here with level of service going northbound because we have all those left turners, people coming, we have a lot of left turn time going this way. We have the people from the office park getting out, so we have some level of service areas here, and that's why roundabout may make some sense there. That's where the level of service issues developing. That's Sycamore and it's Center. Center Drive is more that we have such a long cycle length and we give so much green time to Marshall. That's why you have that level of service D there. So those are something to consider. I haven't had a chance, but I'm going to take projected volumes. These are existing volumes. I'm going to take projected volumes and do this exercise as well. Accidents, we calculated accident rates for where we had accidents over the last 2 years. These circles indicate accident rates. So it's just not the number of accidents. You take the accidents and you divide by the traffic volume to put them all on the same level. And if you have a rule of thumb, if you have less than one accident per million entering vehicles per year, you should be, it isn't a major issue. So we do have accident rates close to that rate on the Marshall area. Surprisingly, 88th and Rock Creek Parkway was over 1. Colton, McCaslin was 0.84. So you can see some of the other ones, and so you might ask, wait a minute, you said roundabouts are safer. Alex, what are you telling me here? And, I was surprised at these accidents. This particular graphic shows the percentage of accidents at these intersections that are injury. So the red portion are the injury accidents. So you can see at all our singleized intersections, we're getting injury accidents. And our roundabouts, we're not getting injury accidents. So on the one hand, we're getting more than what I thought was the number of accidents at the roundabouts, but they're not very severe. I mean, they're fender benders and so forth.
And it was better, and those are better stats than we had before the roundabout on the road.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's been happening is that people are getting so used to the roundabouts and taking more chances. When they first went in, they were, it was a new thing, and so they were taking their time. Now they've driven it, and now they're taking a lot of chances.
Something I thought about on roundabouts that might help, I don't know, but the one in particular at Colton and McCaslin, when you're going north from Highway 128 and there's a fair amount of traffic heading south, you never know if those people intend to turn left or go straight.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to yield, and you could yield forever or guess that they're going straight or turning left. And I don't know if there's an appropriate sign to be used to advise people to use turn signals. Or whether they should. I think they should be using turn signals at a roundabout, but it seems like if you're going to be going out of the roundabout and going left, you should use the turn signal, and we should tell them that. But
it's a very controversial issue right now. There was a statute proposed to say you're supposed to use your turn signal, and then the statute was saying if you're in the roundabout, you don't have to use your turn signal. I think it died.
That was what it was, It proposed that if you're in a roundabout, you are not required to use your signal. But that's not the law. The law can be whatever, you can choose to do it or choose not to do it.
Yeah.
They were making a law where you you did not have to. Not that you
And I
didn't
believe
have
it
to,
did
it was
pass
not
together.
required that you couldn't be stopped.
And Joe, I was going north, the same roundabout, there was a car in front of me that signaled to turn right onto Colton. And it surprised me that I saw a signal in the roundabout, because I haven't seen it before. It was shocking to me. It's like, oh, that's really polite. I'm like, what? They're turning right and they're signaling. So it's actually, it's nice, and it's the polite thing to do.
I always use them, particularly at 88th Street, because of the two lanes. I like to tell people I'm coming across. And I also try to make eye contact, but I'm thinking some kind of, and, you know, if you have the two-lane roundabout, our signage could also indicate, you know, on the inside, you're going left.
Right.
And on the outside, you're going straight or right. And that would help too, but I
That'd be a
think,
lot to read. No kidding.
But I don't think you can do that on the 88th Street roundabout. I think the outside lane, you have to go,
No,
No.
you do not.
really?
No.
It's through right and through left, I think.
You
it's
do
through
not.
either way. You don't have to go left, but it'd be good.
Yeah, they're through either way.
No, but when you're in the far outside lane, I think you have to get over to the left lane and go around. If you want to go, if you're coming down Rock Creek Parkway, get to the roundabout, and you want to go to 88th, don't you have to be in the left lane?
You don't.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Well, you have to
because
do a
you-
turn, but you don't have to turn.
turn
You
if
keep
you're in
going.
the-
No, I understand.
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, but if you're in the right-hand lane in the roundabout,
You can't
You-
go
okay,
across.
when you're enjoying
No.
you have to merge the inside lane.
The
to
one
make
that
it
bothers me
right.
the most is Colton, because there I'm really feeling like I'm guessing at what intentions are. If you're coming back, a lot of people going north, I mean, a lot of people going south in the evening, coming back from skiing, you're tired. How lucky do you feel when you see that line of traffic coming?
Okay. Just want to point out what we're planning on doing with a lot of this public comment. We'd like some feedback from you tonight on some of it, is that on the mechanical noise abatement, that we would include that as part of the plan, that we can continue to study mechanisms for reducing noise along McCaslin. There was issues on speeding on Daly, we'll continue to work on that. With Colin Rye, we're actively advocating reinstitution of that.
We may have some help with Chuck Sisk there too.
Right. We'll look at changes to 228. It was interesting to know, I saw a presentation on Louisville's comp plan, and they were proposing some transit service along 88th, connecting the two communities, which should be interesting concept. So we'll continue to pursue something like that.
But they don't have money to pay for the thing they're supposed to be paying for. But never mind.
Carpool areas, we'll continue to evaluate that. This was an ADA issue. Speeding on Torrey's Peak has always been an issue. 76th Street corridor improvements, we'll include that in the plan I showed you. There was also a request for a sidewalk along the east side of 88th, and I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
a project that we'll include in the plan and start looking at programming that. Indiana and Rock Creek Parkway, the right turn traffic triggers a signal, and I've just met with our contractor to put a delay on that. And Rock Creek Bolton improved the bike connection. So we'll incorporate all those. These are some that we haven't taken any further. The town shuttle, I think we'll continue to have discussions. I'm not sure we want to include in the plan. There's a bunch of other roundabouts that we felt were less of a priority than others. And then restricting movements from Coal Creek, I don't think we want to include that until we see what the actual traffic patterns tend to be. TSC recommendations. They reviewed all this, and they recommended first Marshall McCaslin coordinate the improvements with the DDI in the town center. Like, we don't need to go out right away. We need to look at, see how the town center is coming along, potentially have that comprehensive approach that we talked about. In fact, I'll be trying to apply for some of the ramp funding that's coming up, the acceleration funding from CDOT. I'm going to try to put
Did you go to that meeting? You did?
No, I'm going to,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to see if I can put an application in for Marshall McCaslin
Oh, okay.
on that. Provide a gateway transition from the DDI, make it warm
Now-
and cozy.
Don't take that gateway literally. All we're saying is a little bit of a larger welcoming, coming off that mass of concrete.
Right.
Like an arch, this huge thing going.
And then, don't forget, we can take the small Welcome to Superior or Superior
Yes.
sign and put it on the south end coming off 128. So
Oh, way back down there.
yes, as we enhance this one,
It's not me.
don't forget the recommendation that we also provide a Welcome to Superior at the other end of
okay.
McCaslin.
76th Street parking, you in favor of that? South Superior access, preferred option 1, just to replace the Second Avenue Bridge. McCaslin High Plains included vehicle ped single. I've already started design on this to try to get in before October.
Well, the rest of the board, I'm really interested in their opinion on.
Yeah, well, that's
that.
what we're recommending, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And,
It's not the law. It's, they can agree or disagree. We're just recommending this.
And then McCaslin Corridor Vision include 1 or 2 roundabouts, provide separated trails, prefer a pretty arterial, and remove the wide medians. So, anyway, it's-
So the rest of the board can now speak, as we discuss
Well-
what we're recommending.
Those are your recommendations, those, the only,
I think my favorite one is the kind of wait and see one up front. I think that's really important to see how the DDI turns out and see how the town center turns out. And I think that before we go and do a whole bunch of stuff and then it doesn't turn out to work very well together, I think that's a really measured and appropriate recommendation. I'm not, from what I hear, I'm not a huge fan of berming, but if a case can be made that that's good, it seems like a lot of work, and any view potential would be really a negative, so, and hauling dirt around and all this that stuff has not been a very popular thing around, in town, so that's, in concept, that's not something I'm jumping up and down about, and I don't see that in your recommendations.
it wasn't because I developed it afterwards.
I'm sorry, what?
I developed it afterwards based on what I heard from them. So they didn't make recommendations for a berm. They wanted some separation between the trail.
Yeah, we didn't talk.
We just talked about a noise study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would really like us on this McCaslin corridor vision, I'd really like us to go back to those drawings that we saw about 4 years ago, where it was very pedestrian friendly to be able to walk across McCaslin. And if people remember, it had wider sidewalks, it had some trees, it had a lot of paint, coming right out here, stuff like that. And I'd really like to look at those diagrams as sort of goals for what we do on what McCaslin would look like, especially down here in what will be the high traffic area.
Is that not the pretty arterial then?
That's, I don't know you're pretty, I'm saying that's my pretty.
I think that's close to my pretty, I don't know.
Pretty enough.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
We're talking about separated trails, we're talking about,
I think we're talking about the same thing.
being pedestrian and not being able to.
What I
I get this.
What I recall from that conversation, Lisa, was that rather than have a wholesale redo of McCaslin, we would pick the problem spots and create a solution at the problem spots with potentially a cluster of trees as appropriate there. So parts of it would improve while still moving traffic.
And were you meaning like from Rock Creek Parkway down to, like down here,
No,
basically?
and then basically here, largely here, it was before you were on the board and
No, I remember.
Alia was on the board,
Yeah.
but some of the rest of you guys weren't. And it was one of the earliest things that
The
were
wide
saw as a
sidewalks, they're
vision.
walkable,
Yep.
yeah.
where's the
Yeah.
taming McCaslin
Yes, that
vision?
was it.
But, with respect to the berms, it's hard to assess anybody's noise issue when you're not living it.
And
I have a noise issue with Highway 36 that
That's really expensive.
most people wouldn't have, and it's a big noise issue, but, so, berms may make sense if it's really bad for people.
And as I recall at the TSC, when we talked about the McCaslin corridor vision, we didn't talk about pockets to beautify or make pretty. We talked about the entire McCaslin from Indiana to Rock Creek Parkway to be more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly, not necessarily bringing the speed drastically down, maybe a little bit, but nothing drastic. So while you may have come across thinking that we were thinking of just little pockets, I was seeing it as we were going to take the entire stretch between Indiana and Rock Creek Parkway and kind of make it, beautify it, make it feel safe and not like a speedway. What was your interpretation?
Mine was, I look at McCaslin, I break it down into 3 different parts. 128 to the roundabout, from there to Rock Creek Parkway, and Rock Creek Parkway down here along the town center. So for me, just like Lisa said, this is the jewel. Basically, I would want to take care of this part of McCaslin first, and then as money comes in and so on, we can expand farther south.
And this would be the part where we would expect to have pedestrians.
Yes.
Up on 128, we're not.
I know, exactly. So I think that
Oh,
would be
definitely not on
exactly,
yeah.
So why would we?
Right.
Yeah, we
I'm
would.
just saying that those are the 3 parts, that's how I see it. This is number 1, then from Rock Creek Parkway to Indiana, to Colton, I mean, that's number 2.
I think we all agree that the pretty thing that came out first in this process, that was way overdone. So coming off that was what we wanted to do. We thought it was, way too expensive and unnecessary. So I haven't seen the one Lisa's referring to.
It's worth seeing.
So I would like to see that
A lot of
sooner.
paint and some concrete and some trees.
Okay?
And I just want to make another note here to clarify what you were saying. You can't just make it 3 phases and make the last phase south of Colton. I mean, it can't work like that. Because, everybody's walking, everybody's out, we're all trying to get from A to B. So there has to be another way of looking at that instead of looking at it in phases. Maybe it's from here to Rock Creek Parkway and Rock Creek Parkway to Indiana, but not,
That's what I just said.
no, you said to the roundabout, to Colton. Colton would be the 2nd phase, and then after Colton would be the 3rd phase. At least that's what I
Oh, you just want
heard.
to expand the 2nd phase up to Indiana from Colton. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I've heard you say, yeah.
I'd like
But I
to,
just want to make sure we include the whole town.
trustee Hanson.
Yeah, just real quickly, I know we're running out of time. I think all this sounds really good, but I have a hard time visualizing it. So are we going to see,
Yes.
like, an image of the whole thing and what it's going to look like? We'll also see a time frame, how long it's going to take to do all this, and when we expect to have it done if we move forward, and then also total cost to all of this stuff, and see if it's something we really want to move forward with
And-
the cost.
And what we don't always see, and I'll just remind you, because I'm not sure you'll remember, we want to see how it links up to the things just adjacent to where your project stops. Because we've had problems with that before where, like, I will name that, the street right over there, I'm bad with street names, Coal Creek, yes. Where, oh, now we have a bend over here. Well, had I known that up front, I might have said, let's not quite do it that way. I know that's not quite the plat, but this looks stupid. So anyway, I want to know what's going to happen, just on the shoulder of what we're talking about as well.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks for the feedback.
Comprehensive
Is
report.
there another slide?
One more. So we'll have,
Next steps.
we'll be going back now and revising the plan document, taking all this feedback and actually revising the plan document, going back to the planning commission to get their endorsement, and then returning to the board the final review.
Is that Memorial Day we're going to
Yeah,
do?
depending on how quick Alex and his staff can pull this together, those timeframes might get bumped out.
Yeah.
But that's what we're shooting for.
It's a day after, it's Tuesday, right?
Is that Tuesday? Is not Monday? The 28th?
I'm sorry, we're meeting on Tuesday, the 28th.
Yeah.
Okay, Tuesday's fine.
Yeah, because that's the Memorial Day's month.
Yeah, that's Tuesday.
Matt, did you have anything more, or could we take a couple of minutes before we start?
Yeah, that's,
We'll take a break till 7 o'clock. Start on time.
So far, so good.
You had a chance. You have some?
I have the dabble and I've learned to use it. Here. Town clerk, call us, sorry. The next thing on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion, or are there any proposed changes?
I'd like to make a change
Okay.
I'd like to pull 7F off the agenda, off of the consent agenda, sorry.
And then I'd like to pull 7G, please.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a
Make a motion to approve?
motion to approve the agenda without those two items?
Yep.
Is there a second? Trustee Hanson, the vote, all in favor, raise your hand. So it's unanimous. The next thing on the agenda is reports, questions, and issues, and I'll start in my right with Trustee Pennington. Do you have anything?
I do. I thought we had some excellent community engagement themes since our last meeting. We haven't met for a month because of spring break. I attended Deb's First Fridays event last Friday, and we had a real crowd there on the town center, and I'll let her go into that, but I thought that was a real productive event. And then on Saturday, Joe, Deb, and I attended the Nicholson Primavera event on Rocky Flats, in which the executive director of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Carl Sprung, the PR person, met with about, I'd say, 50 residents. And I thought it was a very productive, sometimes contentious meeting, but I thought our residents were quite informed. And I think we've got the possibility of well, we certainly have the year of our legislators, and I think Dr. Rubina listened to us, so I thought that was good. I wanted to put forth to the board something to see if you're interested in it. I just happened to be walking out of town hall last week when, Randy Goodson was coming in. And we got into a chat, and, you know, he's going back to San Diego to make the revised PD. And so sort of on the fly, I'm putting together for him tomorrow morning a meeting with the realtors who specialize in Superior, so we can sit down with them and hopefully make his presentation more on point. There was not time to publicly notice that, which is what I would have liked to have had happen. But it happened on Friday, and that was too late. So I wanted to propose to the board, if you're interested, ahead, let's say at the 5 o'clock hour, ahead of the April 22nd board meeting, I would invite those same realtors and more, because we have a bunch of conflicts, to we'd publicly announce that everybody could come who wanted to. And it would, the purpose is to provide input to us as board members as to what Superior needs that it doesn't have, where it's oversupplied, what makes it easy to sell Superior, what makes it difficult to sell Superior. So if there's interest, I'll set that up. If there's no interest, I won't bother.
So you're talking about prior to the normal work sessions, or
5 o'clock? Is anybody interested in that?
Absolutely.
Hugely interested.
Can we notice that then?
Yeah, we'd have to.
Okay.
Sandy, would you have Katie be involved in that meeting too?
I would have anybody who wants to
And the
be
chamber.
involved. Yes.
Yeah.
Heather, the whole purpose is to have as many people hear this message and participate in this message, because I think it gives us great guidance. I don't know what realtors would say, and I'd like to hear it. So good, I'll set that up for April 22nd.
Thank you.
Working with Matt, of course. And I wanted to really compliment whoever thought of EngageSuperior.com. I don't know if it was Chris Drapinski or Postak or whoever, but I love that as the name for engaging our residents. And I would hope that we own that and can use it however we want. And I would recommend that when Ranch Capital conducts its May 16th community meeting, that process be included in that as well. I mean, the EngageSuperior.com web address, so people can give email and electronic input if they can't make the meeting. I just think it's a long time coming, and I think it has a lot of appeal to use in every which way we can. So whoever came up with that, I thought was brilliant. That's all.
Thank you. Trustee Kubaris?
Nothing to report. I was out of the state for the whole month of March.
You should report on what you were doing. No. please.
Working in Florida and then having spring break in Florida, so.
Trustee Williams, I know you've been busy.
Oh, yeah. I had my first Fridays at last Friday, April 5th. It was the first Friday of the month, every month. And there was about 21 people in attendance. It was much bigger than I was expecting. And we might have to take over Juju's next time if it's going to be that many, because we kind of crammed into a very small space. So I had kind of the gamut of people there, whether they fully supported the town center, and everyone had their certain aspect of the town center that they supported, and everyone had an aspect that they did not support. There was, I believe, one person that opposed the entire development altogether. And I have a number of specific comments. I'd be happy to read them now, or I could just fill you in with an email. How would you like me to do that?
Maybe be more meaningful by an email, but I don't know.
I mean, it's about a dozen. Okay, I'll do that. All right. And then I will have another one next month on May 3rd, which is the first Friday of May. And I'm thinking it'll be on the town center again, being that I think there may be some movement. Would that be correct? Would there be another meeting that we will be having, either the Planning Commission or something like that,
On
this
the
month?
development aspect?
On the development?
Not prior to that, no. It'd be after
Nothing. It will be after that? Okay. Well, then, it could be the town center, it could be the transportation plan, any number of things. I'll offer that up a little later in the month. And then we had a town hall meeting with State Senator Jeannie Nicholson and State Rep Diane Primavera, and they invited the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. They had 3 staffers. One was the executive director, which was Dr. Chris Urbina. And we had a good at least 50 people that attended that meeting. And it was a Q&A on the topic of Rocky Flats and the toll road. And we had a basic goal in mind was to create kind of a series of, call to actions with the Colorado Department of Public Health, and also with our state elected officials. And I'll be happy to write up a report on that, along with the other one, on what those call to actions are for each entity. I felt they listened with a very keen ear, and they wrote down literally everything possible. So I hope we have some movement at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees comments?
Just 2 things. I was out of the country most of the time since the last meeting. One report is that the Arbor Day that we're having this year is going to be an enhanced Arbor Day. And I encourage any residents that want to come. It's sort of a combined Earth Day and Arbor Day. And it's April 20th. And it's going to include presentations and booths on more than just a certain tree company talking about the thing that they usually talk about. It's going to include booths about xeriscaping and low watering and a whole bunch of other things. So it might be kind of fun, and I think you might consider going. And thanks to staff for adding the booths that the RCAP was really interested in seeing added. Thank you. And then the only other one is that next Coffee Buzz is Saturday the 13th, 7:45 to 9:15 at Panera. Thanks.
Okay, I guess I'll report next. First thing that I have is I will be out of town next week. There's a historical commission meeting scheduled for the 19th, so I would hope, I'm asking for someone to be willing to step in to represent the town board at that meeting. It's at 10 o'clock right here in Town Hall.
I'll do that.
So trustee Skumats will do that? Okay. I attended a Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting last Monday. The primary thing that went on in that meeting was they reported on an overview of how they monitor the remedies of the central unit in drought years, and keeping in mind the major monitoring they do is ground and surface water. And so they they reported that there is not much water flow coming from Rocky Flats since the closure, since the concrete and the runoff has been lessened. They reconstructed much of the replanted grasslands to help with erosion, soil erosion, and water erosion. And the grasslands that they planted were a mix of seeds that were designed to cover the gamut from dry to wet, high to low. And they're confident that they will continue to work well even in drought times. They're not reporting any particular troubles yet. And so that was not doing justice to the report, but it's as best as I could understand it. Another meeting I attended, just Mayor Muckle was unable to go to the Mayor's and Commissioners Coalition meeting last week. So I attended that, and that was kind of like a bit of a buzzsaw because everybody in that meeting was unhappy with a prior meeting they had with Dr. Cog, CDOT, RTD, I'm not sure of all the players, but it had to do with some changing of the game plan, perhaps, regarding what is a first-class BRT. RTD was talking in terms of, well, if we're going to have buses at BRT buses at the time of opening in 2016, that those really are going to be the express buses that we currently have with maybe a BRT logo on them, and some backing out of other things that we were hoping for, like real-time information at the bus stops, a rail on wheels kind of experience, and even where would excess monies go to, the issue being maintenance of the non-express lanes versus money towards encouraging carpooling and so forth. And so there's going to be a letter going back to those entities. Again, it's a little confusing as to who the real players were. I'm thinking RTD and CDOT were the main concerns, but there was a lot of whining about Dr. Cog too. And so about reestablishing what we were promised and what our vision is of a first-class BRT system. And along those lines, a contract apparently was awarded yesterday for phase 2. We don't know the amount of that contract. Mr. Alex is trying to get information on excess funds for some of the things we were interested in, but it amazed me. It's a 50-year contract for maintenance, including snow removal and so forth, to the winner of that contract. And,
Wow.
and so I'm guessing that's tied in with payback by the tolls on.
Did they determine who the
They awarded
concessionaire is?
Yeah, they did.
To who?
Well, I couldn't tell you. Plenary, something or other.
Yeah,
It's not a company that means anything to me.
it's Ames is
doing the first phase, they're going to be part of that group that's going to be doing the second phase. And Alex and I, so it would be a seamless transition from the first phase to the second phase. Aim to be part of that group.
Was there a second concessionaire or no?
Yeah, there's two groups.
Okay.
That they.
What are the names of the two groups?
I'll have to get that to you, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I don't know any more detail. It was surprisingly just a little quip in the camera today regarding that, or maybe yesterday's paper. So anyway, there's some angst going on among the mayor's commissioners that will be followed up on, and I'm sure we will get our way.
I'm sure that was Matt Applebaum.
No, there was a pretty much a universal concern over
The BRT.
the BRT and a little bit of backstepping.
And we're spending near almost $1 billion for our corridor for BRT. Where is it going? To what?
Well, it's
For
gonna
what?
get to the lanes, apparently.
Wow.
And, a fleet of buses, but it may not be what we think it's going to be, a fleet of buses, but we're reiterating the fleet of buses that we promised and desire, and actually all went to Congress, and including RTD, not asking for ways to raise money to pay for that money, pay for those buses, with the understanding which we have the money coming through the tolls and the taxes, but it won't be.
And fast tracks.
Fast tracks.
I mean, this is in lieu of the commuter rail that we were supposed to get.
Yeah, it's in lieu of that. So anyway, that was a surprising meeting.
It was already a pretty pitiful substitute for the bus, for the train. And you're saying they're backing off from that?
Well, they're not backed off yet, but I think there's some stuff going on.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, being able to pay for a bus ticket off the bus, it's not
Well,
much of an improvement.
and Wi-Fi and,
Kneeling or something, the bus, I mean, please.
let me see, the last couple of things. Oh, back to the Historical Commission there. Spring event, I think, is May 18th. I hope there's some advertising on that. That's going to be at Town Hall, 7 o'clock. It's an author who wrote a book about justice for Jane Doe, and it should be of great interest. Yes?
Library board, Matt, they would like to promote that too on the Louisville Library website. So if somebody
okay.
can get that over there.
Yeah, so I'd like to, there needs to be some good advertising for that. We'd like a good turnout for that.
Is it at Town Hall?
It's here at Town Hall. They looked at other locales and came out that this was by far the easiest one to set up and would work, I think, to meet their needs. No, it's a Thursday night, I think.
It's not May 18th.
No, it's April.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry if I said May.
Oh,
What did you say?
April, that week in April's a busy week, because that's also Arbor Day and Founder's Day Park commissioning, and, which the Historical Commission's going to have a piece of that as well.
That's next week?
Yeah, next Saturday.
At
And-
10 o'clock.
And it's going to be a big day for the park.
It's a big deal. I agree.
Yeah, it is going to be somebody doing slackline, I think, at that. A lot of people are putting some time into that.
And a lot of
And
kids
it's also
activities.
Arbor Day and planting trees and in the park as well. I would thank you for mentioning Engaged Superior, Sandy. I was impressed with that as well. And finally, Ranch Capital, Randy Goodson, I would like to commend them for reaching out already. I know they've reached out to a couple of groups. They had a meeting in my neighborhood already, and they've also reached out to Rita Dozell and the Homeowners Association off of just above Waterford. And so that's all
Who
the
did they meet with in your neighborhood?
neighbors.
Just
Yeah, I set up a meeting at my house for neighbors to be aware that something was happening, and Randy asked to come. So he did. And it's so early in the game for them that it's hard for him to make a presentation that really says what they intend to do, but he was getting feedback anyway.
So how did your meeting go at your house? What was the feedback from him and your residents?
The feedback from the residents was protective use.
And what was he saying? Did he present anything?
Well, he doesn't have anything to present. And that was the unfortunate part, because he talked about what his idea is for housing a lot. And that gives the impression that it's a housing development, and that's not a good first step. And so that's...
But he presented, to us in a public meeting. Why didn't he bring those documents with?
Well, it was, a lot of that presentation is what they've done elsewhere. And they don't really, they don't yet, and that's why things are postponed, know what changes they want to propose. It's really early in the game for them, and I think, my impression is they're still absorbing some of the things like our development plan that we approved and annexation agreements and things like that that are in existence. I just say give them a fair chance, but early first impressions are hard to read, because that was like 3 days after signing all the documents. And so,
I believe we have, item number 10, that is something that is important to them, I believe, or hinges on.
Got the warranty.
Right.
okay, so that's all I have. Trustee Hanson?
Yeah, thanks. Last meeting, I brought up a discussion I had with a resident who currently does childcare in her home. She's a licensed childcare facility in her home, and she's only allowed to have up to 6 children. Kendra responded and sent the board, the state rules and all that. And as it turns out that and Kendra, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the state rules, if you're licensed properly, you could have between 7 and 12 kids in your home daycare. It's the town's code that restricts it to 6. She's currently licensed through the state, or through the Boulder County, to have up to 12 in her home. She's a large home daycare. I wanted to gauge the board and see if there's an interest in possibly discussing this in one of the upcoming work sessions, and if we want to make a change to the code and allow something like this to take place. It's a good service for the community. I think it's worth investigating, providing we don't create too much traffic in the community that she's doing this, and she's properly licensed.
Are we talking about Chapter 16?
Yeah.
So that'd be my recommendation that we go to the Planning Commission first.
Well, should we discuss it amongst the board before we give marching orders to the Planning
Keep it
Commission?
outside, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
And, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that kind of service is really, really important and important for our residents.
Okay.
Does the code go as far as identifying the number of caregivers for those children in that home? If
No,
it's
it's based on the home occupation regulation. If this is done in a home, then there are lots of requirements, meaning, the number of employees who can be on site, how much percentage of the square footage of the home can be used for the home occupation, and traffic, there can't be any traffic impacts. So all that would require some amendment if we want, because if they have up to 12 children, there will be traffic, there will be employees, there will likely be more than 25% of the home, but it depends on the size of the home.
So we would be reviewing the home occupation code.
Exactly.
And can we have a comparison to other cities in the area on this and what they do?
And is the HOA involved in any of this? Do they have a,
Yeah.
That would be a separate issue but there also could be covenants of the HOA that prohibit this. So.
Correct.
okay.
Okay.
Is
So
this
the answer is yes
Is this
to
in
you.
the HOA?
Yeah,
Located-
it's
okay.
in Rock Creek.
Yeah.
But But, yeah, good. I agree, Lisa, that this is a valuable service that they offer, and hopefully there's something that we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a few things here, and I'll try and get through this real quickly. Some of this has been covered, but I attended a ProStack meeting, and much of the discussion was focused on a community engagement process regarding an indoor community/recreation space. And there were several processes and tools that were presented and discussed. One of them has been brought up already a couple times tonight, and that's the Engage Superior online tool that's brought to us by MindMixer. And this allows anyone to go on and post ideas and comments and interact in this thread about this particular issue. And if we decide to use it going forward with other projects, then it's certainly there. But it also rewards residents that give their views and also their support or not for various projects. So the website is www.engagesuperior.com. Very simple to get to. Let's see. Also for this engagement process, to find out, if our residents really want to have some kind of community/recreation space, we're having a few community meetings. One is going to be April 17th. That's next week. Next week, right before a ProStack meeting at 6:30 to 7:30 here in Town Hall. Then on May 1st, we're having another one at Superior Elementary School, and on May 8th at El Dorado K-8, and both of those meetings will be held from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Let's see. A couple of new things coming up that are really exciting, I think, within ProStack. A couple of ProStack members, Aaron and Peter, have both taken on a project, taken inventory of all of our park equipment, and they're evaluating it to see if it's still in good shape, if it needs to be replaced or just updated or what have you. But it's a real useful service that they're doing that's, I think, long overdue. Another discussion that came up, and this is also exciting, is that the pavilion in New Founders Park is everybody's wanting to use this, and they want to reserve it and all that. And we've already discussed that this wouldn't be a programmed park. But what ProStack is going to do moving forward, and just going to do a little trial study of this, and they're going to actually program it one day a week, and that'll be Saturdays from 11 at 11 o'clock and 3 in the afternoon, just those two times, and you can program it or reserve it for up to 3 hours. And then after 6 o'clock, then it's got to be open for the rest of the week. So just on Saturdays, if anyone wants to use the facility for barbecues, parties, or whatever, then you have to go through Parks and Rec to reserve it.
Well, and I included that information that Trustee Hansen just mentioned to you in one of my digests.
Right.
Which one was it? Because in the past, the board had said none of the activities at this park should be programmed, so I want to make sure you were okay with this suggestion
Yeah.
for ProStack.
It's a nice balance.
Okay. And I had heard from the mayor, and he was okay with it as well, so.
Yeah.
It was a good idea, rather than dominating.
It could cause problems if you don't. So I think it's a good thing. And then we'll know back and, what's that? Yeah, right. So we'll know in a couple of months, the ProStack will report back, or Jim Payne will let us know what the feedback is on it. But we do want to make it clear that there's a second pavilion that's by the basketball courts. That will not be programmed. That'll be used, for shade, watching basketball, or just to retreat from the sun. That one will not be programmed. And then, of course, already mentioned the Arbor Day on April 20th at 10 a.m. This really is an entire community event. Not only are we going to do the same presentations for Tree City USA, we're going to be planting the trees as normal. Mustangs football will be out there helping plant the trees. But there's also going to be the slackline demonstration with Gibbons Pro Team. I think it's Monarch Little League, or one of the Little League organizations is going to be having their pitching machine, electric pitching machine, out on the new baseball diamond, so kids can come out and take some swings at the bat. There's going to be other youth organizations. The rugby program will be out there doing a rugby demonstration. Disc golf will be out there. So there's going to be a whole ton of stuff going on out there. So I encourage everybody to come out there. 10 o'clock, April 20th. Okay, lastly, I attended a Consortium of Cities meeting last week, and a couple things. One, there's an update from the Water Stewardship Task Force, which is a subcommittee of the Consortium of Cities, and they essentially prioritized several projects to deal with water, but they also released their seasonal lawn watering guidelines that we should probably get copies of these. Will this get forwarded to town? So there's 8 guidelines here that every resident should be aware of, whether we're in a drought or not, and utilize these guidelines. But the big, interesting topic of the night was a discussion and presentation regarding Boulder County's oil and gas regulations and why we should review our own code regarding oil and gas regulations. And what we know over the next several decades that there's a lot of oil drilling in Weld County, which butts up right to Boulder County. And over the next several decades, as that either goes dry or gets tapped, they're going to start moving more and more into Boulder County. And it would be wise of municipalities in Boulder County to start reviewing their code and possibly changing the regulations. We're kind of restricted from some stuff because if our local regulations conflict with state regulations, then the state regulations override the local regulations. But the big message was that we should really look at our code, and they provided a list of 11 considerations that we should be adopting. So I would say that we should take some time to really start looking at that. One thing we learned, and I had no idea this is possible, but the technology is rapidly changing. Fracking is a huge thing. Longmont and Erie are both in huge issues with it. But I found out that they actually can do horizontal and directional drilling of wells up to 2 miles away. Yeah. And Trustee Schumacher has said this several times, that they don't disclose all the ingredients in those chemicals that they're putting in the water and using for fracking. And I don't understand that either, that, why, if it's so safe, why can't we just disclose that kind of stuff? So something we haven't really had to worry about, but I fear that, there could be a time that we might have to worry about it. So it'd be better to be proactive.
Might be Broomfield's next development idea, right? So demo shopping centers next to
Have you seen the
right?
shopping center over there, Flatirons Mall? Boy, they've got like one whole section that they're tearing down. That's just terrible.
In relation to what you just mentioned, last week there was a debate between Governor Hickenlooper and Commissioner Jones that at DU Law School, I believe. I'm told that debate is available on the DU Law School website if you want to.
And the
watch it.
Denver Post also.
And the Denver Post would have covered the article, so very interesting to watch it.
I think we should be pretty supportive of Elise Jones in her first, she's only been a commissioner, this is her 4th month, and to take on a debate with the governor. And
Actually, I was looking at that like, governor's nuts, he's got nothing to win by doing.
right, and she did a nice job. Yeah, I read several accounts of it.
Town managers, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple items. So Boulder County Office of Emergency Management and Sheriff's Department tests the warning siren system throughout Boulder County. It's, April through August is their usual testing time. However, from here on out for the next 4 months, our testing in town will be silent tests, so you won't hear it. They do them on the first Monday.
So if we hear it, it's not a test.
That would be my assumption, yes. So, just an update on that.
How do you know if the silent test works?
Why don't you do a
They have,
that reassures us?
I'm sorry?
Now
Why
I'd
would
be
you do a test that
confused if we
reassures
had
us?
reassured.
A noisy test, I know it's working. Okay.
Yeah, the thought was that, and we did this last year as well, is because people, if they hear this, they get accustomed and they think it's just a test. And so if, by doing it this way, when they hear it, they know it's an emergency. Was the thought behind it. Let's see. Mention that. I heard back from Trustee Williams, the Rocky Mountain Fire District had offered a tour to board members of the district. So I was still waiting to hear if anybody else is interested. If you are, let me know. And then if I don't hear anything by the end of this week, I'll go ahead and set up for at least Trustee Williams.
What day is it?
They haven't set a date.
No, they haven't
just
done-
want to know who's interested.
Yeah, I might be interested.
I would be interested in the right date.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
me
they
too.
might do multiple days, depending on people's schedules.
Do we get to ride in the fire engine?
I
You're
don't
down the
know.
pole.
And we're including the planning commission and all the other advisory committees? Or is it this just an invite to the board?
It was just an invite to the board. But, they're pretty
They're pretty flexible, I
Yeah,
think.
so I mean, if somebody.
I'd at least open it up to the planning commission, because we've got a lot of new members on
I'll
that.
check with the chief
Yeah.
and-
I'd open it up to anybody, but I guess there are limitations to
Right.
cars, right?
I think for what it's worth, anyone in the public can get a tour themselves. If you want to schedule it, anybody can go down there, just schedule it and go
They're
or have a party
usually
there
pretty
or
open
whatever.
to-
Is that, what is it? I thought it was actually going to be,
It'll be a tour of the fire stations within the district and the district boundaries itself,
Right,
what
that's-
areas they
yeah.
cover and that kind of thing.
And then also how they mitigate a
Right.
wildland fire.
Yeah. And then we have started our joint wastewater services study with the city of Louisville. We did the water service part of it last year. This is the final piece of it, to see if we could work maybe something out in the future on a joint services, if there's any opportunities. So that study has begun.
did I just miss it? I just caught in RCAC that waste diversion is Sunday, May 5th. Was that announced? Did you announce that, Lisa?
Sunday, May 5th?
That's what it says here, Sunday, May 5th, and that was my concern, is that it's on a Sunday?
I don't know anything.
Oh, are you talking
No,
about the hard to
Saturday.
recycle events and
Yeah,
things?
it says here in the minutes, Sunday, May 5th. Does that mean
I
May
believe that's
4th?
correct. I'll double check that.
Okay.
And get it out.
And then shred it May 11th?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Saturday.
And the May 5th, I think, was more of a scheduling conflict with EcoCycle, who helps us with the event. They had multiple events that weekend.
Okay.
So. But I'll confirm that.
Town attorney
Nothing, thanks.
and town clerk.
No.
Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment on the consent agenda and non-agenda items. I can't list the non-agenda items, but I can tell you what's still on the consent agenda if you need to hear that. I see we have somebody that's interested in making a public comment. Please step forward. You're looking spry. I'm glad to see that.
Gladys Forshey, 404 South Third Avenue. I have several things here to comment, talk about. The siren was not very quiet when it went off this month.
Yeah, so the first one was an audible test, and then thereafter it'll be silent.
Thank you, sir. I'm very glad to see that finally you're talking about even looking at the oil and gas scenario. I had mentioned this some time ago and was shoved off because Superior wouldn't have that problem. Well, you better look into it. I was exhausted after reading the newsletter of all the activities. I sent Matt and Martin an email and said I didn't believe that this town would ever have all the activities, rec department, whatever going on that we do. It's just absolutely awesome. Colorado Hometown newspaper was at my house this afternoon. There will be an article in the Wednesday paper about the fire truck and some photos from a few years ago. So you'll know about that. I'm here to ask for a meeting with the, I don't know if you call it the Road and Bridge people, Traffic Safety Committee, whatever you call yourselves. I'm asking for a meeting.
TSC.
All right, thank you. Regarding 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue. I want it at site on 3rd Avenue, south side, after 4 o'clock or on a Saturday someday. Let me know if that's possible.
All right, we will set up a email and figure out who can make what.
Okay. Since you do not live in Original Superior, I'm not sure you are aware that Remington has installed pipe. They have no state permit. They are in violation of the state laws of that. And there seems to be a little question about ownership of that property. You might want to check it out. They're illegal.
I just want to make one comment about that. And I did want to mention that you may or may not be aware, I was thinking of mentioning it when Trustee Hansen raised the issue of fracking, that about 2 years ago, I think, possibly 3, Kenda proactively brought forward a whole new, much more elaborate process to try to get, if anybody wanted to get permits to do oil and all the rest of that jazz, and made it made it pretty hard then. I think that was a real service to do it back then, but I think any new lessons we can take and any new barriers, basically, that we can put in out of the advice from other cities, yay. But thank you. You did address that for us a couple of years ago, and I really appreciate that.
We are monitoring it as well, so.
You know, one of the things Boulder has done is they're increasing their fee, their permits to come in and do this. They did a study, and to put in one pad with 4 wells in it, they figured out how much traffic would come in. So one of the biggest issues for municipalities is the road use and the deterioration of the roads. So once they start doing the actual fracking process, they're saying like upwards of 90 trips a day from these trucks going in and out of the site. So they figured out what it costs to maintain the roads for that amount of traffic, and that's what their fee is going to be. So that's one thing to look at. I mean, it's like $35,000, $40,000 for the fee.
Yeah, I represent a number of communities in Weld County, and we're definitely keeping an eye on this. The issue right now is that nobody wants to have a lawsuit at the moment until at least Longmont.
Like Longmont, right?
I might as well let them work it out first, and then see what comes out of that lawsuit. That's what everybody's sort of waiting for.
Thanks, sorry.
Thank you.
Other public comment? Please just give us your name and whether you live in Superior or not.
Okay, my name is Chad Order. I do live in Superior. Been a resident for 13 years. I was here last month as well, mostly to express my gratitude for your litigation efforts against the Jefferson Parkway and the environmental impact study. I stand before you tonight to talk about some of the recent developments on the issue, which Sandy and Deborah mentioned earlier, as well as propose some further action. First, with the recent developments, over the weekend, as you know, there was an event hosted here in Town Hall with State Senator Jeannie Nicholson, State Representative Diana Primavera, Executive Director of Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Chris Urbina. I'd like to recap that meeting just briefly. The meeting was fully dedicated to Jefferson Parkway and its public health implications, and was for the town of Superior only. The meeting was scheduled for 2 hours, ran about 2 hours and 15 minutes. There was about 50 residents here. I don't recall seeing an open seat in the room. The meeting was mostly question and answers, and residents in attendance were very well informed. And there was a very lively and respectful discussion of the issues. The bottom line is there was a packed room of very concerned citizens here. Those in attendance, like I said before, they're very educated and informed on the issue, and they all, from what I could understand of the vibe of the room, they were all very, very concerned and had come to the conclusion that staying the course with the parkway and allowing that land to be disturbed was not in our best health interests. The end of the meeting ended with a call to action for our state representatives, and because mostly the citizens were concerned about no action. So I'm coming forth to you with an idea today, actually. That was a long-winded way to get to it. The idea is to put in place an air quality measurement system for our town. This is a system that would regularly provide the town government and its citizens information about air quality. Information on health risks from contaminated air. This information is currently unavailable to us as residents of this town, to residents of or citizens of the entire state. The information is not available. And currently, because it's not available, there's the void created by its unavailability is kind of being filled with fear and anxiety. And I think the town could do a great service to its citizens by filling that void with real, actionable, trusted information. So I've done some research on the feasibility of doing such a thing, because it sounds a little bit daunting. So my research was done with a scientist I know who does measure air quality and particulates in air for a living. He's built many of these systems before, and so this was something he was able to come up with really easily. And I also double-checked some of the research with some of the local scientists around here who've been involved for quite a while. So my research shows that the town could purchase and operate one-to-many air quality measurement systems or units. The units would collect samples of particulate from the air down to 2.5 microns, which is the level necessary to be effective. I could go into more details, but I'll just leave it there. Each unit has an upfront cost of about $5,000, and the particulates are gathered in an air filter at that 2.5 micron and greater level. To operate the units, you need to collect filters every 2 weeks, and then you need to send those filters off to a laboratory for analysis to see what is in the filter, what was caught, what is in our air effectively. A conservative estimate for the analysis of each of those filters would be $500 to $1,000 for each sample. You put that out for every 2 week samples, you could get to an annual cost of $13,000 to $26,000 per unit. So you got a $5,000 upfront cost, and at the high end, a $26,000 annual cost per unit. To be scientifically kind of valid and relevant, you need probably 2 to 3 units. So now you're talking $15,000 upfront, and at a high end, $78,000 for annual operation. I understand it's a big cost, but I believe what this would do is put the town and its citizens in a win-win situation. There's one situation where the air quality is found to be good, and it remains to be good. Citizens know that it is, and they can let go of this fear and anxiety with real information. If the air quality is found to be degraded over time by certain actions south of us, that would give us a baseline, and it would give us information that we could action and mitigate risks that are being caused by other locations downwind from us, upwind from us. So I'd like you to consider this proposal. We could go, obviously, we need a lot more details, but I'd like you to consider it and then let me know what you think kind of the next steps might be for something like this.
Trustee Skumet?
I know we don't usually comment, but I think this is a fabulous idea, and I would, whatever contingency funds or whatever, I think we should jump right on it. I think it's a great idea. I like the baseline. I like, being able to authoritatively say, gee, under no disturbance, it's this, and then the minute any disturbance happens, we get a chance to monitor that and say something. I think it's a great idea. I would love to see what town investigate purchasing some of that kind of stuff, or let us know what it would cost. The other question I had was about the meeting. Since I couldn't come, I was out of the country. Can you tell me what CPHE said at the end of the meeting?
At the end of the meeting?
Or whenever,
Where were they generally said, we've studied that soil that's in question for construction. We've studied it a lot. It's very well characterized, and there are levels that are up here that require action, and the levels of contamination in that soil are below the action levels. So others can comment as well. This is very much opinion, but what I heard is we're meeting the guidelines, and that's about what we can do. And I also heard...
A wholly unexpected answer.
Yes. And I also heard that studies have been done on the medical situation, and those studies are very old, 30 to 40 years old, questionably if they're relevant or good or not. But those studies show that there's no impact from Rocky Flats or the events that happened in the past, fires and such. The other thing I heard was they're dealing with a lot of other larger issues and maybe don't have funding to deal with this issue.
Well,
I don't know if you guys heard differently.
The 30 to 40 years ago thing is so, from everything I've read, it's pretty irrelevant because they've changed the whole sense of what low level does to people. And it used to be they only assumed sort of pretty massive stuff was the more dangerous stuff. But a lot of this low level long-term stuff is pretty bad. and more bad than they used to think. So-
Well, the one thing I think that was consensus among everybody in the room was that when they say they're measuring and meeting standards, the standards are established to a level of risk. And what is your acceptable level of risk can vary depending upon who you are. But there is an established level of risk that EPA, CDPHE have put, have established standards against a certain level of risk. So when we, even if we are successful, for example, in getting environmental studies, if those studies are against the same level of risk, you're probably not going to get a different result. So that is one of the things that needs further exploration, is what's an acceptable level of risk. The other thing I heard that sounded as if there was some possibility of happening, along with some interest in doing environmental studies, is additional public health studies or future health studies, but those would take a long time. I'm pretty sure of that for something. And the last thing I meant to say was to thank trustees Williams and Pennington, particularly Williams, on their input in that meeting, keeping it moving and keeping it on direction, and actually having a lot to do with getting it set up. But thank you for your input. I support looking at this idea and seeing the feasibility of our doing it and doing it in a meaningful manner. That can we do it? Do we have the staff as well as the pieces? So we'd have to add. We'd have to look at the whole picture, but I think it's a good idea.
What I would add to it is I found it to be utterly disappointing. The meeting started out as if to say, was it that we have 7 air monitors we have 7 air monitors, and then we found out those 7 air monitors are dispersed across the state.
Yeah, that's for clean air.
And none of them are near Rocky Flats. So, I mean, this group kept digging at the question, and ultimately it came down that there isn't any in the vicinity of Rocky Flats.
They have concluded, I think you all caught it, they have air monitored over a period of years, and have concluded there's nothing to worry about, no need to
Yeah, they did the wind studies.
continue monitoring. And they're probably right to the standards that they're talking about, and the question is...
Right. And to the...
Well, no, the real
the
question is, they're talking about what the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge is right here, right now, or at least undisturbed. And what we were talking about, our actual core question in the entire meeting was, well, wait a minute, we're now talking about disturbed land. We're talking about disturbed land that we never intended to be disturbed. So I agree, and I think this is a great idea for air quality and monitoring for particulate matter.
We got to look at our feasibility of doing it, too.
Well, and I think we should just do a study and see where we go.
Is a small price to pay for.
I'm assuming that a 2-micron filter is a tight enough tolerance for a particle of plutonium is...
Yeah, that's correct. One thing I was going to mention in finishing answering Trustee Kumak's question is one thing that was established is they did monitor air for a long time at the 10-micron level, and found nothing, which scientifically you're not going to find anything at the 10-micron level. So we could have done that without monitoring. And then after finding nothing over several decades, decided to shut those down. Mind you, there's going to be, in the future, potentially some construction happening. I don't know why you would shut down monitoring after you plan to disturb the site. But the very interesting thing is talking to scientists who do this every day. 10-micron level is kind of a national standard. There's some systems that I won't get too far into across the United States and across national parks and stuff to monitor air quality, and those are all at the 10-micron level. And when you measure at the 2.5 to 2 micron level, it's a whole different picture. And the 10-micron level doesn't even capture gigantic events at the 2.5 micron that are clearly happening. So I would say that if the town put forth some type of air quality monitoring system, we would have some control, I imagine, on what kind of standards we held that monitoring to. And we'd probably be able to find out, what it is we're really seeking. And, I think the citizens in this meeting don't know if there's any air quality issues or not, and they can't find answers. And I think, at these costs, they're more than I could afford, but, collectively as a town, perhaps it's something that would be worthwhile considering.
Well, it would let us bitch and moan in real time, which is a good thing, too.
Well,
Yeah.
and
With
coming,
real data.
Yes.
having, real data from a town like ourselves, I would think that that could trigger the state and federal laws, and we would have some kind of recourse. I mean, I can't imagine that they would not take the data seriously.
Two things is the scientist was in the room who actually did the air filter studies back then and had said back then that they weren't fine enough to capture plutonium particles, and he was systematically ignored. That kind of irresponsibility is galling, this far into the future now. The second thing is to be reminded we don't have to wait for dirt to be dug up. We've had hundreds, maybe thousands of acres already dug up at Whisper Creek,
And
at Pendellis, and if you go out there on any weekend, there are bulldozers moving that dirt right and left. Somebody had assured me they were watering it down to minimize dust. It wasn't watered down when I was out there. It was just clouds of dust and bulldozers all over.
And if we had scientists capturing this correctly, I'm sure we could find some type of correlations between which direction the wind was blowing and what our air quality looked like.
So the interesting thing is just as the background data that was collected after the major events in '79 and whatnot had already been compromised by the entry of the radiation into the air from the fires, et cetera, we've already got this dust in the air. So sooner is better than later in terms of us getting on this.
One more comment, then I'd
Okay.
like to move on.
Yeah. So isn't part of this plan is to open up the refuge for people to go out and see wildlife and walk around out there? So it seems like we'd want to require some of those air filters to be out there before they let people walk around and see if...
That's an issue that,
And Colorado Department of Public Health sees no issues
Yeah.
with any of that, and there is no reason
although
to
there
do
was-
any of those mitigations.
There was a request for, in the action plan, one of the ideas was increased signage on the wildlife refuge. And I think that might have a chance.
May I ask one final question? I just want to understand, what do you guys, it sounds like there's some interest. What do you see the next step?
You're meeting with Matt, maybe? Would that?
Just having staff look
If there's
into,
enough do you have enough head nods to explore the cost?
Yeah,
Thanks.
That's about all we can do.
That's enough.
that's good.
Yeah, well,
And where we put them...
Yeah, but where we put them has to be, that's part of the study, and, looking, putting out smoke on a windy day and see where the plumes actually fall. And all that jazz is something
Move
that's
forward with something like this, we would have to contract with the
Yeah.
company because we don't have the staff.
No, that goes.
Monitor.
And they want it you want it systematic, you want it documentable and statistically significant.
Thank you for bringing it forward.
And, and just to let you know that there is a science teacher over at El Dorado K through 8 who actually created his own weather station and air monitoring station above El Dorado K through 8, and he puts it on his website, and you can go to his website and see all the data. It's an enormous amount of data, but that is his little bailiwick, and he does a fabulous job, and I always look at it to see what's going on, weather-wise and anything else.
Joe, can I add one more thing?
The last comment.
Is it possible so the question was, we discussed air quality extensively on Saturday. Is it possible to work through Rocky Flats Stewardship Council to recommend this type of enhanced air monitoring at Rocky Flats before it's opened up, so that
I could
they're
answer.
also collecting data?
I don't know, I mean, it can be brought up, but the question of monitoring had been brought up in the past about what has been done. I can bring bring up the question of, does it make
I think
sense?
using 10 microns and 2.5 microns is relevant.
I would bring it up in the sense that, I make it very clear that our community is very interested in that, and that's, what does the Stewardship Council think? And certainly, the next meeting is, I forget, I think it's in June.
Well, and I frankly wouldn't want to see that substitute for
Absolutely.
monitoring under our own control.
Well,
Right, and I think you should pose it as, it helps all communities, because anyone who's going to visit the wildlife refuge needs to know what their risk is, and needs to know what they're coming
At least it's
into.
not undisturbed. I mean, at least then it's just undisturbed.
So I want to move on, though. Is there additional public comment under? Okay. The next items are somebody moving to the front. I bet it's somebody from the Chamber of Commerce about to make a presentation. That's item 6A. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for the time this evening and for this month, honestly, since we have not been together. You have touched on Arbor Day, obviously a large event that is very exciting, and the Chamber's actively involved with the town staff on that event, and want to thank Panera Bread for providing our bagels and treats that morning. I think it's the only thing you have left out from the long list of things that will be going on that morning. And thank you to town staff, honestly, for putting together a fantastic event and including the business owners in that. Secondly, we have wanted to keep you updated so that you know we are actively helping Ranch Capital in any efforts they need to make as an outreach to the business owners as well as those real estate agents. And would look forward to any communications we can increase on that effort. And then the last thing I wanted to do was share the directory, which I had not gotten to yet, and hopefully everyone who is watching has received it in their mailbox, and if not, they can find more here at Town Hall. And then we will have Flipbook hopefully added to our website within the next 2 weeks. That is all.
Thank you very much.
Heather.
And speaking of Arbor Day, that's item 6B, proclamation for Arbor Day. And town manager.
We have a proclamation for the board's approval, or the mayor pro tem's reading. Arbor Day is a nationally recognized event that promotes the increasing of the tree population to enhance quality of life. This year, Arbor Day will be observed on Saturday, April 20th, which has been mentioned, at Founders Park at 10 a.m. Scheduled activities include the tree planting by community volunteers, family activities, Arbor Day themed mural, as well as creating a tree disc necklaces, educational sessions regarding tree care, the sign unveiling for Founders Park, because it's been recently renamed from Town 9 Park. Demonstrations hosted by local sports leagues, slackline demonstrations, and light refreshments by Panera Bread. Arbor Day is one of the requirements for the town to be named a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation. And this is our 10th year celebrating Arbor Day and being recognized as a Tree City USA. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, you have a proclamation?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, there is a proclamation which I would like to read. I'm not sure who's going to sign it. Maybe it will be me. Okay. This is Town Superior, a proclamation of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior declaring April 20th, 2013 Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our community increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. The town of Superior hereby proclaims April 20th, 2013 as Arbor Day, adopted this 8th day of April, 2013. So that is done.
I have an overwhelming desire to say amen.
Who could argue with that? The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of item 7A, approval of the minutes of the March 11, 2013 Board of Trustees meeting. 7B, acceptance of the meeting notes of the Historical Commission, Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee, and the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee. Approval of a liquor license renewal and tastings permit for Superior Liquor Market. Adoption of a resolution for an agreement with Earth Green Fence Products, Inc. for fence paint, stain, and repair services. And adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Unifilt Corporation for filter media replacement for the water treatment plant with Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. Is there a motion for approval? Trustee Flores, second. Trustee Skumatz. All in favor? Do we have to
spending any money?
Yeah, we have to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Would you please?
Okay, Cirilli?
Yes.
Kukuris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle? Oh, he's not there. Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Okay, the next item would be item 7F from the consent agenda, which is adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Clean Energy Collection regarding distribution of information for community solar garden. And Trustee Williams, you asked to pull this item?
Yes. So I wanted to know, I'm assuming there are other providers in the area that you could purchase a community solar garden. Is that true or not true?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, anywhere in the state?
And the reason for it is they have to enter into a partnership with Excel Energy to provide these to residents of the county that they're built within. So I'm not aware of, and maybe Tom, you can come up and Tom Sweeney's with Clean Energy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom Sweeney, Clean Energy Collective. There are no other options.
At the current
We're the
time.
only provider today of community solar gardens in Boulder County.
In Boulder County, that you could purchase outside of Boulder County then?
You can.
No. How about in Colorado?
Well, we have other ones in Colorado, but if you're in Boulder County, you can only purchase in a Boulder County community solar garden.
And there's no competing
There are
business?
No.
And there never will be?
There could be after the next round of bids with Xcel Energy on June 3rd. It's a possibility.
I think we're getting to the same point, as if there ever will be, then why would we as a town partner with one?
It's not a question of partnering with one, it's just a question of disseminating information that it's available. The solar garden will be sold out after it's built.
This isn't an exclusive agreement.
Right.
Right, so I assume if another one emerges in a year or two or whatever, we would disseminate those materials as well?
Exactly.
I just, for me, it just kind of basically renders the town a kind of a sales and marketing agent, pushing this. I just kind of feel uncomfortable with that a little bit. I'm wondering if Kinder has any thoughts on that?
And we did, this started out to be much more of a marketing agreement, and we took all of that out and toned it down a lot to make sure that it was not a marketing agreement, and instead, it's simply letting residents know that this is available. So I did share your concern at some point. We did pull a lot of that out of the draft agreement, and that's how we ended up at this point.
So what will the materials look like, and how will they be disseminated?
Well, we'll work with Clean Energy Collective on what the materials look like, and there's a number of ways, either through our newsletter or utility billing inserts or Channel 8 or the website and those type of things. This is identifying a partnership with this specific company for this specific use. And in return for that, the town will collect a fee to cover our costs for those
Right.
services.
So let me also ask, if we don't partner, can Town of Superior residents still purchase your PVC panels? They could. Okay, thanks. I'm done.
So,
Wait, trustee.
That's okay.
no, go right ahead.
So I remember the discussion and that we agreed that we'd use some of our channels to get the word out, but I'm sorry that I don't recall having the discussion where we actually agreed as a town board to do the partnership. I remember the discussion, but I don't recall this.
Well,
this one.
the discussion that I remember on that night was we would go back, work with them on an agreement to bring back for your consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing tonight.
That's what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
And if you decide that you don't want to approve the agreement, we won't have a partnership.
Okay, and again, just because the background there, the first line says the town board has agreed to partner, and we really haven't agreed until we take a vote on it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
No, but that's the agreement that he's presenting for us to vote on. So that's how you
So
have
it's
to phrase
just
it
a-
in order
Okay.
to...
I think it's a great program. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something.
No,
Okay.
you're correct.
Since this was pulled, and I was happy that it was pulled, because I was thinking of pulling it just for a reason
Yeah.
to explain what it is to the people who might be watching this meeting, this on television tonight. What are we doing?
Do you want to explain that? Yeah, I mean, just give us a brief summation.
How unique,
If we go
how unique
forward,
it
what does
is.
this mean?
Well, I'll have Tom Sweeney, why don't you come up and describe this community solar garden, then I'll talk about what the agreement,
So, as I mentioned last presentation, the community solar garden that we're building in Boulder County is available to residents and businesses, government entities, et cetera, throughout Boulder County. So anybody that's an XL customer has the opportunity to purchase solar panel interests in the community solar garden and use that to offset their usage on their current electric bill and to receive renewable energy certificate payments as well. And so this program that's been outlined that we've worked through with Matt and Kendra is really asking the town to provide dissemination of this service being available to residents or businesses in the town. It's not to have the town market the service in any form. So if residents are interested, they'll need to be in touch with my staff at Clean Energy Collective. This is more a case of a way for us to make residents aware of it and to help educate them about the possibilities.
I thought it was also, there were some extra financial benefits to the citizens of our town because this was a unique way of accessing solar panel purchase that really couldn't happen in a lot of other community situations.
We've been able to clear the way for any residents to be able to benefit from the renewable energy certificate payments in Boulder County. So all of that's been taken away. And now what we're doing is we're asking the town to disseminate the public information, and we will then pay the town a small fee for publicizing the availability of the service.
So, without this agreement, the town wouldn't use its various publications to disseminate this opportunity to our residents. So we will, as part of the agreement, will issue a press release or some kind of notification to residents on the availability of the community solar garden to residents. We're going to put information on the website, maybe in our utility bills, and other avenues, as well as Channel 8 and possibly e-blast or other ways to get the information out to residents, letting them know that the opportunity is available for them to purchase into the community solar garden. And then Clean Energy Collective will provide us materials and the information that we'll be disseminating out to residents. But without the agreement, we wouldn't provide this information through our publications to residents.
But residents can take advantage of the opportunity,
They can.
either way.
Yep.
Trustee Pennington?
I'm a big supporter of the concept of community solar gardens. I have a neighbor who's putting solar in, and I stopped him before he signed that contract with the home-based and sent him down to town hall to investigate this opportunity. However, I don't believe I can support it as our purview to provide information on one type of solar over the many other types of solar being marketed to the community. If we want to put a document together that says, here are your solar options in the town of Superior, and it includes those individual purveyors for for your house as opposed, and for the community gardens, and here are your choices, I can support that. But this doesn't feel right to me to support one alternative over the other alternatives that are being marketed out there. That's my feeling.
Any other comments? So,
Public comment?
pardon?
Public comment?
Any public comment on this? Thank you.
Sorry, I just saw you raise your hand.
Jim Payne, Superior resident, and I'm also on the board of the Rock Creek HOA, and I chair the ACC, Architectural Control Committee for the HOA. Wasn't expecting to make these comments, but I did want to add one perspective here. It's our responsibility, the HOA and the ACC, to review all of the roof solar installations in town. And there is obviously an issue where so many of the houses do not have the capability of installing rooftop because of their architecture, their positioning, those sorts of issues. Furthermore, with the new building code, which incorporates the latest fire code, international fire code, that you all passed, there was I think, sort of a hidden measure, at least I hadn't seen it until recently, that requires a 3-foot setback on solar panels from the peak of the roof. And furthermore, requires free access for firefighters to get up to the peak of the roof. I assume that's so they can vent the roof in the case of a fire. Well, that's going to make it even more difficult, even for houses that a year ago wouldn't have had any problem putting the required capacity on their roof that Excel would usually require to provide their subsidies and so forth. That's going to become increasingly difficult, and this is just hitting us now. So I do think that the town has a vital interest, and it's in its own interest, to do what it can to promote the concept and make people aware that solar gardens exist. It exists right close by. That's not a requirement, but it happens to be right close by. So I think it would be in the town's interest to support this program. This is a program that was established by the state legislature 2 years ago. It is not really, it's a different thing from the rooftop. It's a unique program. It's as they've explained, it's licensed to them right now. So I think it's in the town's interest.
To support, Jim, go to the specific issue of supporting a particular company's solar gardens as opposed to the concept of solar gardens.
Well, right now they're the same thing. And
Correct.
if another company were to be added, you would, as they've explained, you would be able to have the same arrangement with another provider of solar gardens under this state law. But I think it's a special case, and I just think from my perspective, since I didn't plan this, I'm not speaking for the HOA, but I certainly have as much experience with this right now as anyone in the town, because we have to approve all of these installations. And I do think it's in your interest, the town's interest, to get behind this. So whatever the arrangement is, I think an arrangement is a good thing. It will help get it, reinforce it with people who don't understand the concept, and it'll help put it over. And if they want rooftop, there's a bevy of, as you know, plenty of rooftop competition out there that can compete for rooftop. But this is an alternate way that's in the town's interest.
Trustee Gregorius?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I think, in general, we're not, and shouldn't be in the position of endorsing a vendor as a town. But I don't think that's what's taking place here. It may have somehow the appearance of that, but I agree with you. I think this is a win-win for both of us, and most important for our citizens.
Yeah, so we've done this with Garden in a Box, right? So we've done it with other programs.
So I'm comfortable, I guess, in saying I'm in favor of it.
Well, my concern was that it wasn't an exclusive arrangement, and that had been discussed earlier, and that's what I was looking for when this came forth.
And the other thing that Tom and Kent have mentioned and committed to is setting aside 100 kW of the 500 kW, so community garden for Superior residents.
So let me throw like I said, I love the idea of community solar, but let's say the technology, as it is rapidly developing for roof tile-based silicon chips that go directly into the tile on the top of your roof. So when that becomes available and that vendor approaches us and says, we're the first ones out here with these, would you enter into an agreement with us to educate the town of Superior on those? They are unique, nobody else has them. Would we do the same thing for that type of company?
Well, we've been, it's a different, it's
franchise.
It's not apples to apples.
This is an excellent.
Because you have a
Why not?
number of different vendors that you could choose from for the installation of the rooftop solar, whereas this.
No, I'm talking tile-based silicon chips, et cetera.
Rooftop.
Right.
Huh?
Which is rooftop.
Right, it's rooftop, but it's a whole different, it's a whole different technology.
With Excel.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
what
key
this
difference.
is different.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand what Sandy's saying, and my concern moving forward is if there were next year, say, half a dozen more of these solar garden companies, would we do every single one of them? And I would say, no, I don't want to be in that position at that time. To me, this is unique, so I'm really, I think it's a good idea.
That's exactly right.
But I don't want to be in the business of every time a new opportunity comes out, we go to the mailings and e-blasts and all that stuff.
And we've been approached in the past by rooftop installation companies wanting to do something similar, and we've simply said no.
And more
we
so,
can't do that.
we have residents who are in the business of selling rooftop solar, you know? I am oftentimes liberal on precedents, but on this particular one, it feels dangerous to me. So I'm all for promoting the concept of rooftop, solar farms, and perhaps even putting the comment in that article that says, at current, the only available choice for the town of Superior is this company. But I am skittish about deriving revenue from that. That seems to me to be crossing the line. So, obviously, you know my
The
point.
revenue we get from that, that's mainly just to cover administrative costs?
No, we're not doing that billing anymore.
So that's not happening. So-
It's for us marketing it.
Yeah, it's a 10 cents per watt basis. And the estimate, the estimate over the 20 years is $10,000.
We're not getting rich off of this thing. Let's put it into perspective.
I don't care. We are crossing the line into marketing a specific company. So if we want to do an article on solar farms, and in that we want to say the only available choice right now is for this company, And if another comes available and we do another article, here are the 2 companies, or here are the 3, but deriving revenue for doing this puts us in a partnership role. And I'm skittish about that, so obviously you know how I will vote.
So clearly, there's diverse opinions on the board, so I say we got to put on to a vote.
Yeah, I'm hearing Sandy.
So I guess a motion has been made? Or
No,
will we-
no motion has been made yet.
Let's make a motion then.
Well, I just want to say that, I support putting information out there, but I don't support making a resolution and an agreement.
Does someone have it in front of them to do that?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution Number R-24, Series 2013, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement for services with Clean Energy Collection regarding distribution of information for our community solar garden.
Second.
Okay, so it's a motion by trustee Williams, second by trustee Hanson. This does not require a roll call.
No.
No, we have discussion, though.
Any further
So we have
discussion?
discussion on the motion.
Yeah, so let's go back to that, what is it, $10,000 over how long?
20 years.
20 years, okay. Do we derive any kind of revenue at all from Garden in a Box or any other programs that are similar to that? And do we have to take the revenue? Because I agree with Sandy, that to me seems odd. And I would say that we forego the revenue and let's just do it as a service like we do any of these other programs that we do. And is there an issue with that?
So why do we then need an official agreement to do that?
Well, whether we do or we don't, I don't know, but I still think that we move forward with the plan, and that is to disseminate the information through whatever channels we had discussed before. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. Do we need to do the revenue map?
Well, let's ask Kendra, legally, can we do it without the resolution, or?
The agreement is really so that you can collect the fee and agree to do something in exchange for collecting that fee. If you're not comfortable performing that service, in other words, putting this on the website and, the other information, then there doesn't need to be an agreement and there's no fee collected. It's really your decision.
But I want to make sure that we do this program, because I think it's a good opportunity. It's a valuable resource, another resource that makes us different and that we offer to our community members.
But nothing precludes us from doing, at our choice, including it in the newsletter, putting it on the website if we choose, et cetera, et cetera. We're not obligated if we choose to do this, because we are doing general solar farm education, and, oh, by the way, the only place to get it right now is this entity, I feel a little bit better about it. I still do not feel good excluding all those other possibilities out there for achieving solar neutrality or energy neutrality or whatnot. So that doesn't address that point, but I don't believe we should be dictated a program or held to a program that's outlined, et cetera. I believe we should retain then the authority to decide what we want to do.
So I think procedurally, we need to vote on this resolution. If it gets voted
Have a
down,
discussion on this.
yeah, then we can have another resolution that says.
So the discussion is just between us, it's not
Yeah.
between...
No,
There doesn't need to be a resolution at all.
we're discussing.
Oh, we can give feedback to the.
Yeah, exactly.
So trustees comments?
So, do we need the agreement in order to provide the on-bill credit stuff with for Superior residents?
No, they resolved that issue, so that's not needed. So that they've determined that they can provide those to residents without the agreement.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion?
So what's the procedure here, Kendra? I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more.
The procedure is we vote.
No, but, I mean, we could table this for 10 minutes and then get some interaction with these guys, or couldn't we?
No.
Well, I would suggest you
Because if we-
vote on the current motion and
Okay.
then then you can ask the applicant.
If we vote this down, then we can
Right.
discuss it and re-enter it? Okay.
So, is there further discussion on the motion? If not, then all in favor of the motion to approve the resolution as written in the minutes, in the packet, and as proposed by Trustee Williams, please raise your hand. So 2.
Could you state the names for the record?
Yes, Trustee Guguris, Trustee Skumatz. All opposed? Trustee Hanson, myself, Trustee Williams, and Trustee Pennington. Since there was some idea of further discussion on this question, is there someone that has...
Yeah, I would like to hear back from the gentleman of, this decision that we just made and how this impacts them, and, can we move forward with this program without doing the revenue sharing? And
Well, you can. It's not a revenue sharing. It was a concept of paying the town for some minimal amount of effort that you would have put into disseminating information about community solar gardens. But that's not necessary. If the town decides that you'd like to help educate the residents about the availability of community solar gardens, you can do that in any way you choose, whether it's through your website or whether it's through billing inserts or through, as an example, our participation at the Arbor Day event that's coming up on April 20th, which we'll be at. It was really, all of this originally got started through what we thought was a more complicated need to work together, and we were able to resolve those issues. And so it came down to, was there a reason for us to try and do something where we were asking the town to help educate the public, your residents and or businesses. So there's a lot of ways to accomplish that, and it doesn't have to be through any type of fee for service. So it can simply be as a public service that you provide to your residents. And that's not a hard thing for Matt and I to accomplish together. That's really pretty easy. It's a very different service than rooftop, so that's why we're so keen on educating the public about it, because it's...
Far more efficient.
What's that?
Far more efficient.
It is far more efficient, and when you look at what the town of Breckenridge is doing, what Silverthorne is doing, what the EPA is doing, what Boulder County's doing, what the city of Boulder is doing. Boulder County and the city of Boulder have all written this into their smart regs and green regs already. So community solar is called out very specifically as a mechanism to meet their building requirements. So it's part of what we need to accomplish as an industry. So anything you'd like to do there would be helpful.
so I asked the same question to Matt.
Okay, so
Matt's feedback.
I guess my thoughts to you, to town staff and to Matt, is it appears there's unanimity that we want this information to be disseminated to the residents. Is that pretty, everybody feels yes?
Absolutely.
So we don't need to vote on that necessarily. We can give that direction. You can go ahead and proceed.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm good with that. That's fine.
I'm good with that, too, and so thank you very much.
Well, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry we got a little confused, but we appreciate that.
And so,
that's fine.
I think we're ready to move on to the next item then, which is...
I wanted to hear from Matt, though, real quick. How do you feel about this, Matt?
We can definitely do that. We can work with Tom and Clean Energy Collective to get information out to the public without an agreement, if you feel more comfortable with that. So, yeah.
That's being without an agreement.
The only losses of $10,000 over an X amount of years, really.
That's our year's salary.
But really, that's that's not a big issue at all. And really, if it looks cleaner, if it looks better that way, like Sandy said, then let's move on with that. That's fine. As long as the residents get the information in the ways that you were proposing in the resolution, that's good.
The next item that was from the consent agenda that was pulled was item 7G, approval of the 2013 first quarter contingency grants, trustee Hanson?
Yeah, I think trustee Pennington had brought this up a couple occasions, that we pull these and actually recognize these
I'm sorry.
nonprofits that are applying for these things. And I don't think we get the word out enough. I know we get it out there quite a bit, but the more that we talk about it, the more we recognize the people giving this to, I think the better off we are. So if we could just review it real quickly and then let's approve it.
So, tonight we have 2 applicants for the board's quarterly contingency grants for this year. The board has appropriated funds in the budget for this program to benefit community groups that need funding in order to develop or conduct programs that have substantial benefit to the community. Criteria for scoring applications when they're received is 1, the amount of direct substantial benefit to the community; 2, whether the benefit lasts more than a year; 3, whether it provides assistance where there is a health or safety concern; and last, 4th, whether the applicant is locally based. Each quarter, $2,500 is allocated for grants and awards. The town received 2 contingency grant fund applications totaling $2,350 for the first quarter. The maximum any one grant applicant may receive is $1,500 within a 2-year time frame. The following organizations submitted requests this quarter: Coal Creek Meals on Wheels for $1,500 and the Sister Carmen Community Center for $850 for a total of $2,350. Did you want me to go into each of the groups? Or?
No, I think that's good, and both organizations great. And isn't Sister Carmen a member of the Chamber of Commerce here too? Yeah, so good organizations. So, thank you, Matt.
The question I have though on Sister Carmen, why would they not go for the full amount? Have they gotten one in the past 2 years?
Yeah.
That's correct.
No. They won last year. They had an application, and then this is their second one.
So it says $1,500 within a 2-year time frame. So can I presume they got $650 last time?
They did.
Oh, okay.
That's, so, any other questions about this? Do you have a motion, trustee Hanson?
I move to approve the funding of the 2013 first quarter contingency grants.
I'll second that motion.
So trustee Hanson, motion, trustee Gregor, second. Would you
Sure.
poll the trustees?
Gregors?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumas?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Cirilli?
Yes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving the extension of the final development plan for Ethan Allen.
Are they here?
Now, let me open the public hearing. This public hearing on agenda item 8 is opened. And is there proof of publication of this public hearing?
Yes,
Thank
it
you
is.
very much. And as was requested, already noted, is the applicant here?
They are not.
Is anybody?
We, staff notified the applicant via phone and email of the meeting tonight and requested their attendance, and we received no response. So it doesn't appear like they will have anybody here tonight. I can go through real quick just the background if you want, and
Well, that was my next question. The staff have a presentation.
Do they have to be here? I mean, is that a requirement? I'm just asking, I don't know the
No.
process.
Not legally, no.
No, not legally.
I don't need a background or history on it. I just have a couple questions. That if we didn't approve this and the final development plan ceases to exist, and then they end up selling it in a year, then the new owner has to come forward and do another. How long does that process take?
they're, depending on, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 months. A lot of that time is due to just scheduling, because the planning commission has 2 meetings a month,
Okay.
the board has 2. But and it depends on how many issues when they submit.
Right. And then if somebody, because it seems like Ethan Allen's just going to sell it, or they want to sell it, they're not going to put a place here like they told us they were. So if somebody new comes in and buys it, they're probably not going to adopt the same plan. They're going to have to modify it somewhat. And how long does that take to modify the plan?
It's depending on the modification, it could be a shorter time frame, 2 to 3 months.
So there's not that much difference. So to me, yeah, I know where I go on this.
And the zoning reverts back to PD with the specific uses that are allowed within the Superior Marketplace PD.
So that opens it up bigger to, it doesn't have to be a furniture place.
No, no. And it never, they could sell to another user that's allowed within the Marketplace PD and then come back with an amended FDP to match the building with their use if they wanted to.
So I kind of feel like Ethan Allen has put the absolute minimum effort. They just show up every 3 years for an hour. The last time they presented here, it was underwhelming to say the least. Minimal, yeah, if there's a word less than minimum, I'd come up with it. And I struggled, but I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. The economy was bad, I understand all that. I have already made up my mind tonight to vote against this. The fact that they didn't show up, well, that seals the deal for me, so I don't need any more information, frankly. I'm good to go.
Does anybody else have questions, comments? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to comment on this subject? There being none, apparently. And since there's no applicant here to rebut anything that's been said so far, and no further comment from the public, I'm going to close this public hearing. Any comments, any additional comments from the board? And yes, Trustee Skumats. Absolutely, if you may make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution Number R-25, Series 2025, you said? Yes. Series 2013, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an extension for this Ethan Allen Final Development Plan.
Okay. Seconded by Trustee Hanson. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, raise your hand. I see nobody in favor. All opposed? So that motion's been defeated. No extension.
Let them know.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a preliminary reading of an ordinance of the Superior Municipal Code regarding temporary signs in the public right-of-way. The proposed ordinance extends the time that temporary signs may be displayed in the public right-of-way from 48 hours to 72 hours.
Now, this is something we can support.
Thank you.
It's not separate, it's not.
Mayor Pro Tem Cirilli. Just some background for the board. So that there was 3 issues that the board had directed the planning commission to look at with regard to code revisions and temporary signs. One was temporary banners and that people could display at parks or ball fields. Well, Kendra's firm, going through the code, had found an exception that already allows that to occur for longer than 30 days, so it was felt that a code revision is not needed.
I think that came up for signs at the ball field in the
Right.
past, as
Yeah,
I
yeah.
recall.
So,
And is that for any field or just the baseball fields?
It's athletic field.
Yeah.
Any athletic one?
Purple Park?
But who determines which signs are approved, et cetera, et cetera?
They're just exempted from the sign code.
So they
Can they put their own up?
Sign up?
I could put a sign up in
Well,
Williams
we own
Field.
the, of course, we own the property, so you can't, I mean, random people can't just come and put signs up.
But how does
A
one
team would
determine?
put up a sign and
The
then it
request would come
stays
into the
there.
Well,
town
come into the town as
manager's
the owner
office,
of the property.
and then I would make a determination.
And must they be removed after the game is over, or?
No, they're not subject to the sign code at all. It would be up to
We
us
should
again.
fix that.
Well, again, as the owner of the
I
property.
think that's a problem.
We have absolute
It is a
discretion over
problem.
the sign that goes up there.
I think the history,
It's a good
and
thing, it's a
it
bad
may be
thing.
a problem, but the history has been supporters of the teams
Like,
or
yeah.
sponsors, and so
Little League
it was
Baseball.
allowing them to get some recognition for their
Right.
sponsorship. I don't know if there's a problem with anybody.
There's not, because we own the property, again.
Yeah.
We have absolute control over what goes out there because we own the property.
But
The way
we're
it
saying
only
that
addresses parks and ball fields?
Let me look, I believe it says athletic fields, but I'm going to get the
Yeah,
exact.
the way, and I've been a team manager for several teams and solicited advertising, et cetera, we were allowed to put them up at the beginning of the game and remove them at the end of the game.
Right.
You know,
That's
you-
usually how it happens.
We
yeah.
can certainly adopt any kind of regulations
Right.
you want.
We could adopt, we don't have to make.
Well, that could be a
code
policy.
revisions,
No,
We can just do
That's a
internal
policy.
policy.
Yep.
I'm thinking of Ebbets Field that had Burma shave because they.
Right. But I think it's an issue when we say blanketly on any use field, because then soccer, rugby, Mustangs, all those organizations could then get their sponsors and put up on Williams Field.
But what-
Again, only with our.
Go through the town, I get it, but if you let one organization do it, you really can't tell other organizations that they can't.
But you remove them at the end of your game.
Right.
But that's
What do
not
we
the
care?
case on the baseball fields, and I would say that the baseball fields, to me, is different. I mean, it's,
Why wouldn't it be the same on the
Because
baseball
they're putting
field?
them on a fence. and
they're putting on the fence that faces in, and it just, I don't know, it's just part of the, to me, that's part of the
But-
game.
but
But
I
it's
think-
not part of it putting up in other fields. I think that we allow that kind of stuff. I don't see any problem with it in the baseball fields. As long as they're in the field area, I don't see a problem with it. So if we're going to change the rule, I hate to change that rule, because I think it's acceptable there.
Right now, it says, are exempted from the sign code altogether are signs on athletic fields and scoreboards.
And what?
The scoreboard was, sponsored
Covidian.
entirely.
Right.
And didn't work very well, but it was sponsored. But, so I don't know, but
Well, that's
that
totally
requires
Bring it
more
back to the
looking
game.
on that issue. That requires more looking if we're concerned about that issue, but it's not something we can resolve tonight, I don't think.
right.
Right.
It has
I think there's a loophole that needs to be that you can put them up, but you must leave the fence clean at the end of the game. For example, Lisa's not going to go put a permanent
Yeah.
sign for your business on a fence.
Or I would say a sponsor for a season or something, maybe.
We've been, and it hasn't been an issue because we've been fairly restricted on what.
Right.
The other thing is just for durability purposes, these are vinyl signs that don't take the heat and the weather elements anyway, so you actually want to take them up and put them up
So
and
this
take them down.
conversation is totally different than item number 9.
Yes.
Yes.
But can I ask a question about,
I'm losing control of my.
are we allowing those this to happen currently in the
Yeah, we
baseball
identified a
fields?
problem.
Because I remember this came up,
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
a couple months ago, right? And there's been some push to allow them to stay up longer in the baseball fields.
Right.
And currently we say yes.
Right,
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's correct.
all right.
Repeat that, Chris, I didn't hear it.
This came up a couple months ago for the baseball fields, and we currently allow them in the outfields or whatever, within the baseball diamonds. And that's not an issue at this point.
Do they come down at the end of the game?
No, they stay
They
up
stay up there?
For the season,
for the
Yeah,
season.
usually sponsors for a season.
that's different than Williams Field. The Williams Field is the beginning of the game, the end of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Baseball is different.
So in baseball, they must have league sponsors rather than team sponsors.
I don't know what they have.
So, anyway.
So this is a preliminary reading. Are we voting this today?
Wait, it's not, she hasn't gotten to
Yeah.
my
We haven't gotten to what we're
That's the one that doesn't do anything. It's
So,
all-
and the second issue that the planning commission discussed that is not included in this ordinance tonight is with regard to sign spinners on private property. The planning commission,
Private property?
private property. They had previously discussed it in town right of way and decided not to recommend that change be made. And the board asked them to look at it on private property, which they discussed at their meeting, that they discussed these other issues, and they, after some lengthy discussion, decided not to recommend a code revision to allow that either.
And, I didn't go through those minutes, and I'm sorry. I wanted to understand what the rationale was, the conversation, all that kind of stuff. Sorry.
No. I was just saying that's consistent from the tables with Louisville and some other towns, where no distracting moving signs.
Louisville has those signs over
No,
there.
it's not allowed, it said in the thing. That's what it said.
You may see them out there, but
They may not be allowed.
They're not official.
they enforce.
I see them a lot, actually. in very prominent locations, too.
I'm just saying, the table that they provided said not allowed.
I wouldn't report them. They got me to go buy some pizza, as a matter of fact. So,
that's why that provision is not included here, because the planning commission.
well, I disagree with the planning commission. I still think it's a good thing for our businesses to do that, as long as we have some kind of control over it.
So the one item that did get included in the ordinance was the temporary signs in the public right-of-way. As long as they continue to meet our size restrictions and setbacks, the planning commission's recommendation was to increase the time from the current 48-hour allowance to 72 hours.
And the main rationale was to allow you to put it up on Friday through the weekend.
Exactly.
Or a 3-day weekend.
Yep.
And
And
then-
then down on Monday morning.
And then put it back up on Tuesday for 72 hours? What
Within a
is,
7-day period.
within 7 days?
It's a 3-day weekend, Reese. I'm okay with that. That's fine.
So
I don't think it makes that much difference.
I thought we were also
You might to the
looking at
businesses.
extending the election season or not extending.
We already took care of that separately.
That was already done.
Yeah.
So that's what you get for working with an aging workforce.
So, Matt, do we vote on this or no? You just-
So Heather's here, she's stayed here for the whole meeting. Can we hear from you on sign spinners, 72 versus 48 hours? Do you hear anything from your businesses on these issues?
Hello, Heather Craycraft again with the Superior Chamber. This was mainly brought up when Sears Home Appliance opened their store here in the marketplace, and they expressed
Right.
a want for it. Honestly, I have not talked to any other business owner before that or after that. And honestly, I think there are some people who continue to do it, or not the sign spinners, but they're putting their either sale or catering or other notifications out currently anyways. I think there's other ways they can go about marketing to the general public as well as the current residents, whether it be through HOA or through the chamber. And we work very closely with Sears on their marketing outreach. So in your direct question as to spinners, honestly, we do not hear too much about that.
The request, I got an email, I assumed it went out to the whole board, was from Juju's.
Yeah.
They had what I thought was a great series of Burma Shave-like signs, paninis, omelets, natural coffee or whatever, and I thought that was an excellent way for them. It obviously had taken a lot of thought, they were well-produced, it certainly did not create an eyesore in the median for me. And, I thought it was a great effort to really let the community know they were out there. And those got removed somehow and/or stolen. I think they got removed and taken to some dump. And they cost $300 to produce, et cetera. So I'm certainly in favor of any opportunity for them to be, any new business to try to do this. And I also happen to like the small signs that Sears has out now, right on the other side of the sidewalk, that just says 10% off sale or whatever it says. I think they're discreet, but they get me to turn in. And, I think it's just a subtle way to help the businesses. So I wish we would be flexible on this.
And Sandy and I are, been proponents for this thing from the beginning. We need more converts on the board to get a majority, because I think we need to push this through.
You already have me.
Do you? Is that right? Yeah, we got
We'll
3.
talk.
So,
We need,
I don't disagree completely. I don't think we should allow spinners and that kind of stuff on McCaslin, because I
Right.
think that's a huge distraction. We've already got enough issues and concerns with the turn off of 36. But I would say that we leave it up to the property owners to make that decision of whether they want to have spinners and all that kind of thing out there. We shouldn't dictate what Dean Callan says. We should let them make that decision. And the same with the marketplace.
but we do,
It is
though,
our
Chris, by prohibiting it. So
Well, we established
It is our
signage rules for all the PDs.
Every
and-
development,
And that's what we've always done.
I mean, sometimes less government is better. That's what you're proposing.
That's what I'm proposing.
I know, I agree.
But not on the right-of-way.
That's what we did with number 8.
And that would mean Marshall as well. You wouldn't want to distract people at
That's
Marshall.
right. But inside the
So then-
marketplace, I think they should allow it. Inside, or let.
Inside the marketplace, we don't have that authority, do we? Is that?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
And Rock
It's not
Creek
the
Village, we say no.
so
Yes, we
whatever.
do. That's my whole point, though.
Yeah.
Correct. And now, if you want to allow it on private property, Kendra's firm, on the next reading of this, we can include that language.
Yeah, of course.
But just because we're allowing it doesn't mean the owner of the property will.
Well, then it's up to the businesses to work with their property owners to convince them to allow it. It takes it out of our
But
ballpark.
at least we give the green light.
So we can approve this first reading with some work on this thing to come back for the second reading and see how that goes.
But this is just for the little signs.
Well,
It's not for the
we'll
stickers and all that.
amend this ordinance to include, if that's your direction.
Yeah, that is the direction, yes.
It is, but I say that with caution. The worst thing that could happen is that we allow it on private property, and then in Rock Creek Village, we get next weekend a dozen spinners out there throughout the parking lot doing this thing.
And do you know how many little businesses we have in this town? A tremendous number. If you put on your GPS and tell it to look for local shopping, you get all kinds of people who sell eBay stuff. And all that sort of thing. Can you see all these spinners in front of every house? And
No, not in front of
I'm just saying.
Cilantro Oil governs that.
serious.
Cilantro Oil governs that part. But the fact is, if Tutti Frutti wants to get my attention, have some ice cream cone out in front, twirling. To me,
Something
that's
dressed
right.
like an ice cream cone.
Down in Littleton last week, and there, I saw a bunch of them, and I go,
If it becomes clutter, guess what?
Well, not
Yeah,
smoking, there's a smoking.
it becomes a business management and marketing tactic, so.
We're out of control.
it is, but, so,
We have a first reading before us, which changes from 2 days to 3 days.
Correct.
Right.
And we will consider, and I'm not saying how I'm voting on this.
Does it
because
specify the
I'm
size of the
very,
sign?
I mean, on the longer, on the private property spinners and all that stuff, I'm not sold on that, but I have no problem with that coming forth as a possible addition in the second reading. That's what this consensus seems to be here tonight.
Does this am I missing the size restriction, or is that not in
Everything else
here?
stays the same.
They're only changing from 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the only change.
okay.
Size was restriction,
Was that 24 by 36 thing?
I don't want to extemporaneous.
Yeah, that's what it used to be.
I do know a lot of thought went into that.
Yeah, I remember. I can find it then.
It doesn't.
I was on the planning commission when that first came through there. A lot of thought went into that. And then I think it's never changed since then. So,
Right.
I wouldn't go further with that.
Right, I agree.
But I'm not dictating that either. So, trustee Schumann's.
Do you want a motion?
Yes.
Are we there?
This is for first
Move
reading.
Town of Superior Ordinance Number O dash, it's preliminary, no number yet. Preliminary, no number yet, okay. Series 2013, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, amending Section 16-19-170 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding temporary signs in the public right-of-way.
Trustee Kukula, second. Any discussion on the motion? Trustee Pennington?
So procedurally, do we amend this
It's going to
now?
be a different ordinance, it's going to have a different title.
Right.
Like, you can approve it tonight anyway.
Okay.
So, any other questions, discussion? Okay, well, let's call vote on that. All in favor, raise your hand. First reading, looks like unanimous. Okay, the next item, which is item 10, which is a preliminary reading of an ordinance amending Article 15 of Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code by the addition of a new section, 16-15-40, regarding developer guarantees for public improvements. Town Manager?
Thank you. The Superior Municipal Code currently requires the developer to provide certain financial guarantees in the form of a development improvement agreement, contract, or other security arrangement to ensure the completion of public improvements. The security arrangements are typically letters of credit or cash at 110% of the public improvement cost estimate. Additionally, there is a 2-year warranty period for the public improvements. During the 2-year warranty period, the letter guarantee or letter of credit or guarantee drops to 50% of the public improvement cost estimate. Before you is a new section that would be added to the code that would allow the board to accept a version of a guarantee that would deviate from the code if agreed to in some form of agreement. It's giving the town board the flexibility to approve a letter or a security or guarantee for the public improvements that is outside the requirements that are currently in the code. We are leaving the 110% requirement for the public improvements in, as well as the 50% requirement. But if a development comes forward in the future and through negotiations with that developer, the town board feels comfortable with a different type of guarantee other than a letter of credit. One example is through bond proceeds. That would allow the town board to go ahead and agree to that. Currently, you wouldn't be able to without this code revision. We've provided some information on surrounding municipalities and what they require. Typically, it's in the 100% to 110% of public improvements, and then during the warranty period, that requirement drops to 15%, which is less than what the town requires during the 2-year warranty period. Also, a number of the surrounding municipalities accept performance bonds as acceptable guarantees, and we've never accepted typically a performance bond as a guarantee. We prefer a letter of credit, cash, or some similar type of guarantee. Planning Commission reviewed this at their last meeting and voted unanimously to recommend approval of this code revision with one minor revision, which was to add period, so it state warranty period following instead of just warranty in the revised code language.
Where did they want to add that?
So in the second sentence of the code revision, it talks about any other agreement, contract, guarantee. Let's see, is that where it goes? Yeah, warranty period or security submitted by an applicant.
Yeah, they wanted to add the word warranty period. Honestly, that doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of this sentence.
I like the concept, but I don't find where it fits. I would like to incorporate the concept. I think that the idea they had is as the board considers what it wants to do in terms of the financial outlay, they should also consider the time covered. So, right, make it 3. Well, if you reduce it, the bond cost or the warranty cost, you increase it from 2 to 3 years. So I like the concept because I think it gives us quite a bit of flexibility, but how would it read?
We would need to...
I don't think we need anything. No, I think this covers it.
Would you explain that more, Kendra? Why you think that?
Well, basically what it says is we can consider and accept any other agreement, contract, guarantee, warranty, or security. So the warranty is already included as one of the things that we can accept as an alternate. as long as the Board of Trustees finds that it reasonably guarantees the completion and warranty of the public improvement.
But do we have another part of the code that specifies that 2-year business?
Yes,
As
but
a-
it would allow us to deviate from that in the board's discretion.
And will future boards understand that if it's not explicitly stated?
I believe it is explicitly stated because it says any other warranty.
Trustees comments?
So I'm against this and kind of solidly against this, and I'm happy to be explained to by Paul or others about why I shouldn't be against it. So this is the way I perceive it. When businesses come to develop in a town, or they basically pit one town against another, and they say, how much will you offer us to come here, and how much will you offer us to come here, and all that. I see this as opening up something really important as yet another negotiating point where they can try to drive us down. If the code requires that we are covered and we don't get to deviate from it, I think that makes sure that we're covered. And I just think that if we open this up and allow flexibility, we could have a significant problem with it becoming a negotiating point where we end up losing on another thing. And I think it all relates to the problem that we have with state law and how we recover revenues, and the fact that if Home Depot is over there, we get nothing. If it's over here, we get something, and then they drive down. We want to share this revenue, and all that sort of stuff. I am happy to have something that's in code that requires that that this is handled and cannot be a negotiating point. So I feel very concerned about it.
The 110% requirement and 50% requirement unchanged, because although the 50% in comparison to other cities is a little high, we've been able to make that work with developers. What's more important, maybe Paul can come up and speak to this, is...
So maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I understood you to say
This
we're basically
would
opening
allow-
this up.
This would allow, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I did too.
What's being proposed here is that this board or a future board would have the ability to negotiate that 50% down to 25%.
Right.
And the 110% down to anything.
Exactly.
Yes.
And 2 years down to anything.
So what's wrong with Lisa's argument? And I agree with it, that it becomes a negotiation, subject to negotiation. So where is she wrong in making that statement?
No, it would be, but we've left the starting point is 110%.
Yeah, starting point is
That becomes meaningless,
ending
yeah.
point.
I want to come up and talk about the bond proceeds and how we're ultimately trying to achieve code revision.
Well, what's to prevent a future board, though, from having the same discussion one night and changing it? I mean, it could.
That's true.
So it seems like we want to do this now because maybe Ranch Capital has asked that maybe this is a little excessive.
Why are they special?
Just asking.
Right. What they've asked to do is how they fund the guarantee. Rather than a letter of credit or cash, what they're proposing is through the bond proceeds. And that's what I wanted Paul to speak
Okay.
to.
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Paul Nellis, town staff. As Mr. Magley had identified, specific to the development agreement that the town board entered into RC Superior LLC, otherwise known as Ranch Capital, in March, they had a specific request that this provision of the code be changed exactly as the manager had identified. So currently within the code, we require developers to secure with a letter of credit or cash. And specifically, and it's noted in the cover, specifically what Ranch Capital is asked to do is in lieu, it looks like essentially in lieu of cash, they would like to issue bond proceeds, which from my perspective, is essentially cash, and use that as the escrow. So they had asked then for a provision that on or before May 13th, the town board consider an amendment to the code that would allow deviations. So that was the intent of this new section of the code, to allow deviation. And as they've articulated, they're looking at
bond proceeds or as bond escrow as a reserve, which, is effectively cash.
So they're not.
But isn't it cash when they get the money? I mean, regardless of where they got that money, it's still handing us cash. I don't understand this.
I don't understand the difference.
And the subtlety may be that
Hold it a day and it's cash, or what? I don't know,
they'll issue debt, the debt, and this escrow will be held by what's known as a trustee, and then we would have then the ability, my assumption is to draw on that, like we would draw on a letter of credit if in fact there were issues with the public improvements that needed some attention. And again, not having so it was a general concept proposed, so what staff was trying to respond to as part of that particular agreement is giving the board flexibility then to review an agreement that would come forward and look at that on its merits and potentially and consider that.
So this is much broader than just bond proceeds in this particular instance.
There were several other ideas floated, and I think part of the issue is that developers are becoming more creative with how they secure public improvements. And their point was, we don't know yet what creative mechanism will be coming up by the time we're building this development. We'd like the flexibility to present to you a new option, perhaps one that we haven't thought of yet, in addition to these bond proceeds. And the idea with this language and the way we drafted is to allow them to present this creative option, whatever it may be, and you to consider it, decide whether it's...
But I want a creative option or a derivative or a whatever, derivative of a derivative or anything. I want cash for a town.
And I'll tell you that their response is that we can't do it then. So, I mean, because of the way financing goes today, they cannot have cash to do these improvements.
So does the bond proceed go against the district? Is that how that works?
Again, without the specificity in front of us, and just based on maybe some conversations with the developers, this would be, yes, district-issued debt, or potentially developer-issued debt that would be escrowed. It wouldn't necessarily come to us, but it would sit in an escrow account. I'm assuming, again, no specificity here, but assuming the sole purpose to meet our guarantee requirement for those public improvements.
So that's just another way of not having to put the money up?
No, the money, no. And again, we don't have it in front of us, but I don't think staff would never recommend that to you. I think the intent is to put the money up in some format other than what's specifically identified in the code, which is a letter of credit or cash. And again, they're proposing, I would look at it, cash potentially in the form of bonds that are issued, and then that money would sit in an escrow account to be used for very specific purposes, this being probably the exclusive purpose.
That's kind of what it sounds like to me. I think what Deborah was just saying is that if they've got $100 million in cash in the bank and they've got $150 million in bonds that they just issued, they want to use part of this $150 million in bonds issued instead of taking their cash down to $50 million and tying that money up for a certain period of time when they could be using that as cash flow for projects and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, again, we don't have a specific.
I'll even take it to a dire situation. The red flag that's gone up in my brain is that we may have a developer here who wants to make sure they have none of their own money up and all of the public's money up. And that gives me the heebie-jeebies. And so the bottom line is, how well capitalized is this company, and what money of their own are they putting behind this project?
So again, that sounds like a question outside of the scope of the board's consideration this evening. And
but it seems to me that this may be a way to assure that they have no money of their own up, and they have a lot of everybody else's money up. And to me, it's a very critical question here.
And I think we already had negotiations that were way too fast for my comfort zone, and I'm not comfortable voting on something that's, well, it depends on what they bring forward. That's not cool by me.
Let me ask, what would you, how do you want to proceed, I guess?
I have a question about the language proposed before we, I'm struggling with 1620, which is the, in order to get the permit, this is what they have to do, and they have to provide one or more security arrangements, including irrevocable letters of credit, cash, or other performance guarantees acceptable to the town that cover up to 110% of the cost. And then 1630 just addresses the warranty and requires 50%. And that is specific as to cash or letter of credit. It's not any other performance guarantee acceptable to the town. Our proposed language, at least for the permit, is addressing any. It seems like the only thing we have to address regarding the permit is whether it has to be 110%, and that's not even, because we already have the latitude to address any other performance guarantee acceptable to the town under 1620. So why do we have to address 1620 at all, 161520 at all?
Because that talks about the 110%.
And they don't
And that's
want
what makes me
to
uncomfortable.
cover 110% either?
Exactly.
That's the part that's not cool.
Okay.
Well, to reframe the debate here, if 110% is out of the range of what our competitor cities require, we all need to know that. If others require 50% or 15%, we need to know that. And the same with that 50%. So that's a whole different debate, issue to bring before us than to give ourselves or future boards complete latitude regarding how low it goes, because then it does become a negotiating tool. If the proposal is, for example, everybody else is 75% and we're 110, bring that before us and say, we got to get competitive. But...
Or not.
Or not.
But there may be a reason why we're 100%.
This open, we've got, to throw that out there, we've got a lot of bentonite soil issues that other people don't have. We've got, one assumes aquifer issues over on that side of the street the same way we do over on this side of the street. If we have unique situations in this town that caused us to be 110%, we need to know that too. But this has given me a cause for serious concern.
So this is a preliminary reading.
Right.
And all we're approving right now, we're not approving 110%, 50%, or anything like that, or letters of credit or anything like that. All we're approving is that we would have the ability to entertain what they would like to do.
Well, it guarantees we're going to be requestive each and every time to do something.
Absolutely. Terms of opening to the negotiation.
It will be an issue that will be negotiated. So I'd like to see comparatives too of what other towns are doing. I mean, I'm okay with the preliminary reading going forward to get additional information on what other towns are doing. Go ahead.
Joanne, I'm confused about this preliminary reading, because what happens, and has happened before, is I don't suspect we're going to have a lot of time between this one and the next reading, but sometimes there is substantial amount of time that elapses, and we forget why it is we had issues on the first reading, but we approved it anyway. And I sort of vowed personally I'm not going to do that. If I don't like it on the first reading, why would I approve it on the first reading? Let's fix it, bring it back, and have another first reading.
I'm also, just as an aside, a performance guarantee and a warranty troubles me, because performance guarantee is finish the job. If you don't do it, somebody else will do it. But what is the job on a warranty? You're debating if there is even a job. When you have a letter of credit or cash, you're in the driver's seat on what the job is and that it's going to be fixed. And performance guarantee on specifications to do a job is somebody who goes belly up or can't finish, then you go to the bond and people that provided the guarantee and say, okay, you got to perform, get somebody in here to finish.
Yeah, I think
the intention is to keep a letter of credit or cash or bond proceeds or some sort of cash for the warranty period as well.
What happens if we don't approve this tonight?
Your agreement
Well-
with them only requires that you consider it. So there's several things. You could say, we considered it and we didn't do it. You could say, you could consider something different at your next meeting if you want us to rewrite this in some way.
It's
I mean, I feel like we need more information.
too open-ended.
Yeah. Need more information, and is there any way that we can leave the town code the way it is and negotiate with just this particular developer for these?
I don't know if you can do that. I don't know.
Code is written. That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to
Like a variance.
There's flexibility.
That's what we're trying to enable you to do. If the code stays as is with no change, there's no negotiation.
Right.
But it can't occur for just one developer. I mean, it has to be changed literally within the whole entire code.
Yeah.
Well, then
Yes.
I just can't do that.
I would entertain, if we defeat this or vote it down on first reading, I would entertain, if the real issue is that we as a community, as a town, are not competitive, I would entertain that data coming before us, including, how the required amounts in escrow or whatever it's called in commercial terms, as 75% of the project is complete, do you release funds on a staggered scale? When it's 0% complete, you need 110, but at 75% that falls? I mean, do some towns...
Yeah, what's our flexibility here?
And my concern is this is too flexible, and so
Right.
the only thing I might be interested in entertaining is if I understand, when you go out for a mortgage or a bond, you get cash and you pay somebody, and that's fine. I wouldn't have a problem with it saying cash or bond proceeds, but that's probably the only change I'd be willing to make, because a bond, like when we bought the open space stuff, we got the cash, we put it in a bank account, and it's cash, and you could pay somebody with it. That is cash equivalent to me, but the rest of it with it the language was too loose. So that's probably the only change I'd be at all interested in making. So.
And I'm not even interested in making that until I gain further knowledge as to whether or not there's a restriction on the use of bond proceeds, which again is public money as opposed to private money. If there's currently a restriction that we would be releasing by adding that language, I don't want the law of unintended consequences to go into effect, in which we're actually loosening things up considerably from what typically happens to bond proceeds. That's just not knowledge I have.
And I assumed it was the company that would be putting out those bonds. The developer would be putting out those bonds.
town's not.
Yeah, so that it's not a public thing.
Okay.
It's- They get money, they pay us that money.
Do not have the capacity.
But who do they issue those bonds to? They're not municipal bonds, they're privately issued?
It could be one of two sources potentially. It could be the developer issuing that to whatever, market they are looking at.
That's the one I'm assuming.
Right. And at a certain point in time, if in fact a metropolitan district or districts are created over there, those districts will ultimately be able to issue debt, not right now, because they don't have the direct backing of any property tax or sales tax revenues or any other revenues over there. But again, we would need to see some level of specificity, but it's not no town exposure, no town issue.
But there's a difference. If a Superior Metro District does it, is that a private issuance or is it a municipal issuance?
It's a metropolitan district issuance.
So-
I mean, it's a separate
But
governmental
does it-
entity issue of debt.
For taxation purposes, do you get the municipal benefits, the tax exempt thing, or is it private?
Depending on the use, and if it's for infrastructure, then typically, and Ms. Carberry, correct me, but typically it would be double tax exempt
Right.
for both state and federal tax.
So see, it matters. It really does matter what's happening here.
Well,
So
I'm
again,
talking about only about the private developer putting out the bonds. That's all I'd be talking about.
Yeah, so,
Handing over cash.
Paul, do you have any reservations with this reading tonight?
well, I think,
The staff recommended, I think.
and Trustee Hanson, I'll continue your question, but circuitously through a question that Trustee Pennington had brought up specific as it relates to comparative to other municipalities. And we have that information, and perhaps it was my error, and I apologize, but I didn't feel it was necessarily germane to this discussion, in as much as we don't have necessarily a proposal in front of us. But we do generally know that our requirement of 110% for the initial improvements is in the ballpark. The 50% requirement during the warranty period is not competitive with our other municipalities.
What would be competitive?
25.
To 15%, actually. So,
Can you give us history why it's at 50%?
we don't know.
It used to be there years ago. Most municipalities used to have a 50%. Gradually, as the markets, it's harder and harder to get money. Gradually, in order to encourage development and encourage these public improvements to be continued and to be warranted, municipalities decreased this percentage gradually. But 50% was the standard, I want to say 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. It gradually decreased over time.
And arguably, so I appreciate what our attorney says, but then arguably as well, we have some onus and some ownership in this, and as well as other municipalities. When you're going through the process and the entity is building public improvements that ultimately are going to be dedicated to the municipality, and these are roads and our sewer and our utility infrastructure, we review the plans of the developer, we inspect those particular items, and we ultimately say, yes, it's good to go. So they're hopefully, if you have a responsible process to inspect and feel comfortable with those particular items, that's perhaps another reason why maybe the warranty has dropped.
But we did that in Rock Creek.
That didn't turn out too good.
Well, we had a
The
little
Rock
bit
Creek
different,
Road.
a little bit different situation in Rock Creek, where we had 3 metro districts with their own overarching boards who were responsible for different aspects of that public infrastructure. And it was only in the year 2000 when the board assumed responsibility of the Metropolitan District
But
water.
didn't we just have one town code enforcement process? That was the commonality, and it failed in Rock
You
Creek.
had the metro districts conducting the inspections for those public improvements, because
For their own?
because they were dedicated to the metro districts.
No, I'm talking about the roads. I'm talking about the
Yes,
roads.
okay, so I got confused there, yeah.
And then ultimately, as part of the dissolution of Districts 2 and 3 in the year 2003, there was a whole list of assets,
Yeah.
including these public infrastructure assets, that were ultimately deeded over from the district to the town. So I can appreciate that concern, but...
Flatiron Mall. I mean, I just...
Well,
So now, I'm sorry, Christine, it's back to your question. To some degree, it all depends. You know, and I'm sorry for the nebulous response here, but...
You almost never say that, actually. Traditionally, all these years that I've known you, you're pretty, yes.
From my perspective, is 50% better than 15%? Absolutely it is. Is it competitive for whatever that's worth? Absolutely not competitive. And then our type of security that we have as a manager identified, cash and letter of credit, half of the, we surveyed 6 neighboring municipalities, half of those municipalities also accepted performance bonds and bid bonds, and having experience with trying to collect on those, very difficult, if not impossible, compared to these other surety sources. So from a comparative basis, if we would get down to a 15% level, then yeah, I would feel comfortable assuming that we had a solid review and inspection process in place. And I believe we do.
I think we do have that, though.
Operative words.
No, but I think we do have that now.
so give us the build-out thing, the public infrastructure, Matt, this is probably your question. Public infrastructure all goes in what, the first year?
No.
When does it go in? By phase?
Yes.
Okay,
So depending on, they'll have a phase 1.
right. And how long might that take to build out?
The public infrastructure in the first phase will probably be built out in the first year.
Okay, and then, but how long will phase 1 take to complete, in your opinion? What's the range?
Vertical construction, could be 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And some, the market is going to have some.
So my question is, if it's built out in the first year of Phase 1, and it takes 3 years to complete Phase 1, will that infrastructure be adequately tested to make sure it works before the warranty period expires? Or might we, if it's backloaded to where most of the construction happens in year 3 and the warranty period's off, and then you throw all the demands on it, and a problem emerges that was not anticipatable before. Talk to that. Could that happen?
So the best example is the Superior Marketplace. That was the public infrastructure, the final public infrastructure was done as part of Phase 5 with the water, sewer, road, and stormwater improvements that were made in that final Phase 5. And so you had Phase 1, which included part of the public improvements, detention, main water, sewer, and storm, and then the final development plan for Costco. That was Phase 1. So those got built. Once the town accepted those improvements, the 2-year warranty period started. And then you had Phases 2 through 5 over the next 10 years, I think, occur over the build out. So
So what happens if Phase 1 takes 3 years to fully build out, and the warranty expires in 2 years, and we don't even know we got a problem till the 3rd year? It's on us, right?
So if it's...
In the Phase 1.
In Phase 1, if it's built up, then you have till year 5, because there's the 2-year warranty period.
Kicks in after everything, building structures are built.
Right, after the town accepts those public improvements from Phase 1, that's when the 2-year warranty.
And they only accept them after the full build-out of Phase 1?
Correct.
Okay. That clarifies.
The 2-year warranty period is already established in 5 years.
So if we, go ahead.
Go ahead, Justice Clements.
No, I thought you were going to say something. Go ahead.
So if currently, per our code, we can't negotiate that 110% or the 50%.
No.
Can we negotiate that 2-year warranty period?
No.
So it seems to me, from a risk standpoint, it seems like I'd rather see us have an extended warranty period that we could negotiate, say, 3 years, because I agree with what Sandy's saying, is that, I mean, you look at the Flatirons Mall, that's in deep trouble, and that's way beyond 3 years, but this gives us another year if we can negotiate in that additional year, and in lieu of maybe going down to 25%.
So would the board be comfortable with leaving the revising this language, leaving the standard at 110% and some lower percentage for the 2-year warranty period, 15 or 25%, and then just amending the language so it talks about letter of credit, cash, or bond proceeds? Is that what I'm hearing?
But
As
actually,
a possibility?
no, I wanted more information from all the municipalities in the area.
What other towns?
Then you're going to get, then you're going to get.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
And letter of credit, I don't know. I don't know if that's as good as cash.
Letter of credit's pretty good.
But I don't know. And then the bond proceeds, I think, I wouldn't be interested in public bond proceeds. Go on.
I want their money up.
Yeah.
And then, so, I would be really interested in seeing in front of us a table of what other towns.
Sure, yeah, we can provide that.
The other thing I'm really concerned about is, I wouldn't want this and the negotiations or whatever that these guys across the street want to come up on a Friday that we're supposed to agree on a Monday. I'll vote for no, and I will ask everybody else to vote no also. That's just not okay for them to try to push us like that. I'm really resentful of them having done that in that last round. And then the second one, my next request is, would you please prepare for us a list of the steps that this whole development has to go through yet, and when we might be seeing those sorts of things, so that we can mentally get prepared for what's coming forward. Thanks.
So I guess what I'm hearing now is we're not too keen on approving the preliminary reading. We have time to have a preliminary reading before May.
Well, we can,
Oh, actually,
we can approve this with some changes, like Matt said.
No.
Or we can bring back, or we can, yeah.
So Matt, what happens if we don't approve it tonight? Say that again.
What's the message to Ranch that we're sending?
Just that we need to work on language, bring it back to you.
I also think it's a message to Ranch that we need due deliberation, and that we will consider these things seriously. I don't want them to think everything can be rushed the way the last meeting was.
So I guess if we don't approve this, I think, do you have some guidance on where we'd like to go?
I mean, it's basically just what I stated.
Can we go get a preliminary idea by the next meeting?
I'm a little confused as to what we're doing, so I don't know how I can possibly get you language, because I don't know what the term bond proceeds means. I don't know how we're going to limit that. The point of this was to give you all the flexibility, again, as these ideas come forward, to consider them on a case-by-case basis. Right now, we don't have, some of those ideas haven't been presented to us. So we can certainly go back to Ranch Capital and say, what exactly is, what I would like to do is go back to them and say, what exactly are you looking for? Do you have any ideas right now of what these alternatives would be? And if so, can we be more specific in this ordinance and only allow those and not open it up?
And then just come back with the minimum, the maximum risk or the minimum surety suggestion. Isn't that what you would do in response to that open-ended question?
And then you have a chance to consider that and say no. I mean, all we're required to do by that agreement is consider it. So, but I can't draft the next round of this without, I don't know what we're trying to do. So I will need more information from them.
Well, we considered this.
Yeah, we don't even know what we're being asked to do. That's the frustration.
Some information on other jurisdictions as well.
I like how you presented it. I'm comfortable with you going back
Something
and
that makes sense.
sharing that with them.
Okay.
Well, what I wanted to prevent,
I'm not open
what
to it.
I wanted to prevent was bringing back a code revision for every developer that comes forward. I don't think that makes any sense at all.
I don't want to have.
I don't want to change it. I don't want to change it at all.
The flexibility to consider, as Kinsey stated, on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I agree with you, Matt, except the fact is, if we don't have some rigid guidelines in our own code, what will happen over the course of time is what we do will be all over the board, depending on which board's in place, how strong a negotiator the company is, what our competitive neighbors decide they have to do, et cetera. So, when I want to deal with this same way I deal with my own money, and I need this to be a lot more rigid than that proposed paragraph. So, I know what I want to have happen. I think I'll repeat what the board just said. If, in fact, we are uncompetitive in some aspect, I want to know how we're uncompetitive and what our neighboring communities do on those aspects. And that goes to the 110, it goes to the 50, it goes to the term, and it goes to the type of funds that other jurisdictions may allow that we don't allow. So those are the four groups of categories.
Allow performance.
I want to see it in it doesn't mean we're going to make those changes, and I particularly don't want to change any of the percentages. I don't care if we're uncompetitive on 50% or 50 or whatever percent. I don't care. I think, they're here, this is the property that's the best. I don't see another piece of property that looks anything like this. I don't see why we should have to be competitive just to, we've already brought them in. I don't see a point.
Back to the current language, 1620, except for the 110%, seems to allow discretion regarding performance guarantees acceptable to the town, other performance guarantees acceptable to the town. Warranty is pretty specific on what the performance guarantees are.
All right, so let's finish the conversation here for tonight.
So I guess what I would suggest is that I at least go back to them and find out what the alternatives are, and then we present you with another draft at your next meeting to consider.
Right.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, a very specific proposal.
On this preliminary reading, first of all, and then I have a sense of where the new vote's going to go, so if we have an idea what.
Let's be done.
Okay, let's table it. Then, does that need a motion?
If I could just say one thing, though, about this, I think this has been a long time in the making, and I'm not trying to say, we got to jump on this thing right now, but I think that there is some give and take on both sides, and that we really need to not just, throw this out and say, no, we need to have this 50%, and it needs to be the way it's always been, because if we run the risk of that property across the street always being the way it's been.
Right.
So I think that we should really consider, stepping out a little bit and doing things a little bit.
I think tabling the motion is a wise move. It says we need more information.
And I don't have a problem with being fairly competitive, but I do have a problem with being open-ended.
Do we have a motion, a table motion?
I don't know, I've never,
Trustee
Can you
Williams.
table a motion,
Second,
make a motion?
Trustee Pennington. And Trustee Clemente.
I'm voting.
All in favor of tabling this? Unanimously tabled. It's a tough one. Item 11 is an executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024E to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024A, and to hold a conference with the town's attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-424B regarding Jefferson Parkway and Randall v. Town of Superior. Do I have a motion to?
I make a motion to go into executive session?
Trustee Gregorius, motion. Trustee Hanson, second. All in favor? Unanimous. So we are in executive session.
Just make sure that.
And TV is still on.
Yeah.